And we're just going to go ahead and
Hi, Anselmo.
kick
Good
off.
afternoon.
Hello, Anselmo. How are you? Namaste. Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Yeah.
Hi, Anselmo.
Hi, all of you all.
Hello,
Good afternoon.
Anselmo. Hi.
Hi.
Okay, so now that we have everybody here, I'm just going to go ahead and start and kick the forum off. Because we okay. There's like a, hold on a second here. Okay, great. We do have guests here who need to go off on their next appointments as well. So I'll go ahead and start. So if I kindly could ask everyone to mute their mics so that we could take out the excess noise. Thank you so much.
Excuse me, Sue. I do
Yes.
not see the interpreter channel now. It's missing, actually.
Okay. It should work now, right? Okay, great. All right. Thank you everyone for bearing with us through this technical difficulties. I think we live in a new normal now and trying to have to adapt to a lot of these new technologies. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the 2020 Online Kathmandu Democracy Forum. My name is Sue Saw, and I'm the program manager at the Asia Democracy Network and based in Seoul, Korea at headquarters. So since 2018, the Permanent Secretariat of the Community of Democracies, the Asia Democracy Network, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea have partnered annually to implement a democracy forum in Asia aimed at furthering the discourse and promoting Goal 16 of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and especially SDG 16, which is the goal where we specifically aim to promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all, and build effective, accountable and inclusive institutions at all levels. This year, we have the privilege to co-organize the online Kathmandu Forum with the Asia Development Alliance, Global Call to Action Against Poverty, Asia Dalit Rights Forum, and the Migrants Forum in Asia, and of course, our local host, the NGO Federation of Nepal. So back in 2018, the first democracy forum was held in Busan, Korea, called the Busan Democracy Forum, and in 2019 in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia. Both forums highlighted SDG 16 as an enabler of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda and as an integral cross-cutting component with other goals such as gender equality, Goal 5, and climate change, Goal 13. Both forums were multi-stakeholder platforms gathering civil society, governments, and international organizations to exchange information, discuss challenges, sharing findings and good practices on the implementation of the SDGs. Through these forums, we confirm that the SDGs is a valuable tool and a vital partner in promoting and defending democracy in the Asia region. The region with its diverse countries, languages, history, and sensitive geopolitics is also faced with challenges of speaking about democracy and human rights, as it is many times very politicized. So therefore, within the framework of democracy and human rights, the SDGs have become an excellent entryway for civil society as well as government to work together to achieve democratic principles and values under the SDG framework. So we were aiming to hold continue this tradition of a face-to-face forum and hold this year's forum in Kathmandu, Nepal. However, with the global spread of the COVID-19 virus, the pandemic, we were forced to shift things online, which is why we're all here today. Therefore, we redesigned this multi-stakeholder forum to be more of a research exercise, inviting civil society organizations to monitor and research the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic to human rights and democracy within the SDG framework, in which the findings will be shared with all of you over the next 3 days. So without further ado, I will go ahead and officially open the program with the opening ceremony. We're honored to have special guests to welcome and congratulate us. And with that, I will now call on Thomas Garrett, Secretary General of the Community of Democracies. Unfortunately, he was not able to be here with us, so he sent a video message, which I'll go ahead and share with all of you now. Hold on a second, sorry.
Dear friends, good afternoon. Although I wish I was able to be with you in person as we had planned, the Community of Democracies and I are happy to participate in this online Kathmandu Democracy Forum 2020, which is focused on promoting democracy in Asia and beyond and accelerating the implementation of the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development through SDG 16. Since 2018, the Permanent Secretariat of the Community of Democracies, the Asia Democracy Network, the Asia Development Alliance, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea have partnered with you every year to implement a democracy forum in Asia and the Pacific aimed at furthering the discourse and promoting Goal 16 of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. In 2018, we gathered in the Busan Democracy Forum, and again in 2019 in the Ulaanbaatar Democracy Forum. Both of those forums provided a platform for knowledge sharing among countries in Asia and the Pacific. And they brought together participants from civil society, policymakers, and other stakeholders, including regional and global organizations. And we discussed the progress made and shared best practices on monitoring, reporting, and implementation of SDG 16+. This current global context with a number of democracy challenges, including the pandemic, makes the achievement of the Sustainable Development Agenda, especially that of Goal 16, which is aimed at fostering peaceful, just, and inclusive societies, perhaps more relevant than ever. During the past few months, civil society organizations across this region have been actively developing monitoring reports at the country level, as well as thematic reports to both assess implementation of Goal 16 targets and to look at the impact of COVID-19 on democracy and the SDGs. This year, the Kathmandu Democracy Forum will provide a platform for knowledge sharing among multi-stakeholders and for civil society organizations from across Asia to present main findings from their SDG 16 monitoring reports focused on the impact of the pandemic. In these next 3 days, we will have the opportunity to hear from civil society and discuss challenges as well as progress made in the region towards the effective implementation of the SDGs. I would like to give special thanks to the government of Nepal for hosting this important virtual forum, and of course, to the Republic of Korea for the continued support they have provided, which makes this democracy forum possible. COVID-19 has forced us to physically distance, but it hasn't slowed down the work by you and your fellow activists on this critical agenda. And so let me say, I want to extend my gratitude to each of you for your participation and efforts towards supporting the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda and for strengthening democracy around the globe. Moving ahead, strengthening and accelerating implementation of Goal 16 will be critical to our shared goal, which is leaving no one behind. Thank you and have a good conference. Dear friends, good.
Great. So thank you for that. Next, we will have Secretary General of the Asia Democracy Network, Ichal Supriyadi. Thank you.
Hello? Can you hear my voice?
Yes.
So how can we
Okay.
clap during online forums? Garrett said very good.
All right. Thank you, Sue, for the times. I would like to address warm welcome for everyone's. Then my gratitude to Honorable Minister Bahadur Shahi, member of spokespersons of the National Planning Commissions, Honorable Park Chung-suk, the Ambassador of the Republic of Korea for Nepal, and Honorable Parbat Gurung, spokesperson of government and Minister of the Communications and Information Technology, Government of Nepal. My colleague, Thomas Garrett, Secretary General of the Community of Democracy, who has delivered the message through online video. And of course, Chitram Lama, the President of NGO Federation of Nepal, who are hosting these events. Excellencies, esteemed colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, namaste from Bangkok. And good evening, good afternoon, everyone. I think it is my privilege to address these forums and recognize achievements of the civil society in Asia to continue the works amid pandemic challenges. This pandemic is creating vulnerability to the socials and economic aspect, but at the same time makes a negative effect to the respect of democracy and human rights, as the freedom of assembly and association is restricted in many ways and many fronts. The leaders exhibit regressions by the pandemic's response, while many taking advantage to the vulnerability of the civil society, media, and opposition leaders in functioning their check and balance efficiently. The Kathmandu Democracy Forum, what we're doing now, what we're having now, is an evidence of the ongoing commitments to the adoption, innovations, and resilience of the civil society in the wake of COVID-19. The civil society organizations able to overcome challenges and begin to reconsolidate their works from the online space to produce research and organize these events. On this 3-day forum, we will learn the situations of the democracy and human rights in relation to the SDG 16 during this pandemic. We will hear, we will listenings, we will exchange the report from 13 countries in representing South, Central, Southeast, and Northeast of Asia, and also including the 6 thematic reports on minorities, Dalit, disinformations, inequality, migrants, and refugee. This report should open the awareness and serve as evidence base to pursue the future advocacy and strategic planning to build resilience in reclaiming the loss of civic space because of the pandemic. On behalf of the Asia Democracy Network, I would like to express gratitude for all the writers, the authors, for this excellent job. And also for the men, women, and co-organizer who made these works possible. I'd like to thank the Generosity of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea, who is continuously supportive to this initiative, and the representative of the Nepal government for standing with us today. Hoping this forum will energize all of us to keep promote democracy and human rights in the coming futures. I congratulate all and then have a good presentations and productive forums, and don't forget to celebrating the achievements. Thank you and Danebat. Over to you, Sue.
Thank you so much, Ichar. Right away, we will go ahead with Mr. Jitran Lama. He's the president of the NGO Federation of Nepal. Jitran, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ms. Moderator Sue. Chief guest of this opening ceremony of Kathmandu Democracy Forum, Honorable Parvat Gurung, spokesperson of Government of Nepal and Minister of Communication and Information Technology. Special guest, Mr. Honorable Minbahadur Sai, member and spokesperson of National Planning Commission. Mr. Thomas Garrett, Secretary General of Community of Democracy. His Excellency Park Chung-isuk, Ambassador of Republic of Korea for Nepal. Professor Anselm Lee, Echal from ADN, Patricia from COD, Hideki from ADA, Pradeep from GCAP, and all other friends and colleagues and distinguished guests from across the globe. All the presenters of 13 different countries, representative of national and international civil society organization, network and alliance, colleagues from all organizers, which includes Community of Democracy, Asia Democracy Network, Asia Development Alliance ADA, Global Call to Action Against Poverty GCAP, Migrant Forum in Asia, Asia Dalit Rights Forum, and NGO Federation of Nepal, and all participants of this forum. First of all, namaste and good afternoon. As a host organization, NGO Federation of Nepal and myself would like to welcome you all in this forum. We are really privileged to have this opportunity. We are grateful to Community of Democracy, Asia Democracy Network, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Republic of Korea, and all the supporters who made this possible. Sue and former speaker already explained that Kathmandu Democracy Forum, KMD of 2020, is actually continuity of similar forum in the past. In 2018, the first Democracy Forum was held in Busan, which was called Busan Democracy Forum, and then Ulaanbaatar Democracy Forum in Mongolia, and then last year we also participated Tokyo Democracy Forum in Japan, and so on. Now this time it's fortunate to have Kathmandu Democracy Forum from 4 to 6 November 2020. Because of the pandemic, we have no option but to do this online. These democracy forums have been a multi-stakeholder platforms gathering civil society, governments, international organizations, development partners, and individuals to exchange information, discuss challenges, share findings, and good practices. Highlighted ST16 as the enabler of the 2030 agenda, along with other cross-cutting goals, expanding civil society space, and promoting democracy in Asia and beyond. KMDF 2020 is the continuity of the same trend. And this time we are going through the COVID-19 pandemic. And so we share and discuss from this perspective, COVID-19 pandemic and backdrop. In KMDF 2020, civil society organizations from 13 nations across Asia will present their thoughts, observations, and findings by keeping SDG 16, human rights, democracy, and civic spirit at the center. Thematic presentation from viewpoints of Dalit rights, disinformation, inequality, migration, and refugee will also be helpful to get focus on the major issues of Asia regions today. Finally, at the last stage of this forum, The declaration will sum up the deliberation of this forum. Now, I want to share a few sentences about CSO's role in Nepal. The political environment in Nepal has undergone substantial change in the last decade or so, and Nepalese civil society have been playing a crucial role in this transformation over the period, including protecting human rights, democracy, supporting social cohesion, promoting accountability, and facilitating effective social service delivery. As a national umbrella organization of Nepalese civil society organization, NGO Federation of Nepal is playing vital role for coordinating and networking with national and international actors, lobby advocacy for peace, human rights, democracy, and civic space. It has been tremendously contributing for achieving 2030 agenda by establishing a common platform called Nepal SDG Forum, which is only a recognized multi-stakeholder platform including UN agency, development partners, private sectors, and all major stakeholders and groups. Also, NGO Federation of Nepal and with its member organization joining together towards emergency response during disaster and all types of humanitarian support during COVID-19 pandemic. However, now issues related localization of SDGs and effective service delivery at local level, climate change, capacity building of CSOs, resource crisis, and civic space are the priority agenda for all of us. At last, I request everyone to take part in this forum, listen to civil society voices, and build common understanding on our agenda. I believe that by participating in this forum, we are in the right place and the right time. Together, let us accelerate the exchange of ideas and scale of good practices. Finally, I thank you and warm welcome once again to all distinguished guests and colleagues for your participation and support. I thank you. It's over to Sue.
Thank you, Jutram. Okay, great. And we'll go ahead right to our opening chief guest. We have the Honorable Parbat Gurung. He's the spokesperson of the government and Minister of Communication and Information Technology for the government of Nepal. Honorable Parbat Gurung, I'll give the floor to you. Thank you. And before we will have simultaneous interpretation, which you could access on the bottom of your screen. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Kathmandu Democracy Forum 2020 को कार्यक्रममा उपस्थित योजनाका सदस्य मिनबार साइज्यू, कोरियाका महामहिम राजदूत पार्क चोङसुङ ज्यू, कम्युनिटी अफ डेमोक्रेसी का महासचिव थोमस गोरेटज्यू, गैर सरकारी संस्था महासंघ नेपाल का अध्यक्ष जितराम लामाज्यू, एसिया डेमोक्रेसी नेटवर्क का महासचिव इचाल सुप्रदीज्यू र यस काठमाडौँ डेमोक्रेसी फोरम 2020 में उपस्थित संसारभरका सरकारी तथा सामाजिक संघ संस्थाका प्रतिनिधिहरू, नागरिक समाजका अगुवाहरू, सम्पूर्ण उपस्थित महानुभावहरू र सञ्चारकर्मी सबैमा यस सम्मेलनमा यहाँहरूलाई हार्दिक नमस्कार गर्न चाहन्छु, सबैमा अभिवादन व्यक्त गर्न चाहन्छु। आज यस काठमाडौँ डेमोक्रेसी फोरमको यस कार्यक्रममा हामीले कोभिड-19 को कारण हामीले अनलाइन मार्फत हामी यस सम्मेलनलाई सम्पन्न गर्न गइरहेका छौं। यो सम्मेलन 3 दिनसम्म चल्नेछ। यो सम्मेलनमा म नेपाल सरकारको तर्फबाट, सञ्चार तथा सूचना प्रविधि मन्त्रालयको मन्त्रीको तर्फबाट र नेपाल सरकारको प्रवक्ताको तर्फबाट म यस सम्मेलनलाई हार्दिक सफलताको शुभकामना व्यक्त गर्न चाहन्छु र यस सम्मेलन सफलताको निम्ति हाम्रो तर्फबाट काठमाडौँ डेमोक्रेसी फोरममा जुन नेपालको तर्फबाट जो साथीहरू लाग्नु भएको छ, जो अर्गनाइजेसनले यसलाई संयोजन गर्नुभएको छ एनजिओ फेडरेसन र अन्य सबै व्यक्तित्वहरूप्रति म धन्यवाद व्यक्त पनि गर्न चाहन्छु। र आज कोभिड-19 को कारण हामी विश्वमा हामीलाई एउटा चुनौती थपिएको छ। हामी सबैलाई अहिले सङ्कट पनि भएको छ। विश्वका एउटा शक्तिशाली राष्ट्र किन नहोस्, कमजोर राष्ट्र किन नहोस्, हामी सबैले अहिले एउटा चुनौती बेहोर्दैछौँ, थप सङ्कटहरू हामीले बेहोर्दैछौँ। यो सङ्कटको सामना गर्नको निम्ति हामी सबै विश्वकै समुदायहरू आज एकजुट हुनुपर्ने, सबैले एकताबद्ध रूपमा हामीले यो कोभिड-19 को विरुद्धमा लड्नुपर्ने र यसको अन्त्यको निम्ति एकजुट हुनुपर्ने परिस्थिति छ। हामीमा विश्वका विभिन्न किसिमका हामी सबैमा आफ्नो किसिमको समस्याहरू, आन्तरिक देशका समस्या हुन सक्छन्, राजनीतिक समस्या हुन सक्छन्, अन्य धेरै समस्याहरू हुन सक्छन्। तर यी सबै समस्याहरूको बीचमा पनि हामीले आज कोभिडको विरुद्धमा हामी सबै एकजुट हुनको निम्ति हामी नेपाल सरकारको तर्फबाट म यस काठमाडौँ डेमोक्रेसी फोरम 2020 को यस अवसरमा सबै विश्व समुदायप्रति हामी हार्दिक अपिल पनि गर्न चाहन्छु। सबै हामी एकजुट हुनको निम्ति म आह्वान पनि गर्न चाहन्छु। र आज हामी कोभिडको यस समयमा नेपालमा हामीले एनजिओ फेडरेसनले सबै सङ्घ संस्थाहरूलाई संयोजन गरिरहनु भएको छ। सबै सामाजिक सङ्घ संस्था, नागरिक समाजलाई पनि संयोजन गरेर नेपाल सरकारसँग सहकार्य गर्दै, समन्वय गर्दै हामी कोभिड-19 को विरुद्धमा हामीले विभिन्न किसिमको क्वारेन्टाइनका कुरा किन नहोस्, हामीले होल्डिङ सेन्टरको कुरो किन नहोस् र उनीहरूको व्यवस्थापनको कुरोमा किन नहोस्, हामी सबै कुरोमा व्यवस्थापन गर्नको निम्ति नेपाल सरकार र सामाजिक सङ्घ संस्थाहरूको बिचमा सहकार्य गर्दै, समन्वय गर्दै अगाडि बढिरहेको छौँ। यो सन्दर्भमा नेपाल नागरिक सङ्घ संस्थाहरूले निश्चितै रूपमा नेपालको यो कोभिड-19 मा धेरै महत्त्वपूर्ण भूमिका खेलेको म स्मरण गर्न चाहन्छु। र सङ्घ संस्थाहरूको यो भूमिकाप्रति पक्कै हामी नेपाल सरकारको तर्फबाट उहाँहरूलाई धन्यवाद र फेरि पनि हामीले थप नयाँ ढङ्गबाट कोभिडको विरुद्धमा हामी लाग्नु छ, सामाजिक रूपान्तरको निम्ति लाग्नु पर्नेछ र अन्य उत्पादन र उद्यमशीलताको निम्ति लाग्नु पर्नेछ। सामाजिक एउटा रूपान्तरको निम्ति मात्रै होइन, सामाजिक उद्यमशीलतामा लिएर अब सामाजिक सङ्घ संस्थाहरूलाई हामीले फेरि परिस्थिति अनुसार हामीले रूपान्तरण गर्दै यो कोभिड-19 को यो अवसरमा नयाँ सोच र नयाँ दृष्टिकोण लिएर सामाजिक सङ्घ संस्थाहरूलाई परिचालन गर्नुपर्ने दायित्व पनि छ। यसको निम्ति हामी हिजोको सामाजिक सङ्घ संस्थाहरू, हिजोको हाम्रो नागरिक समाज, हिजोको नेपाल सरकार, हामी गभर्मेन्ट एजेन्सीहरूले सोच्ने तरिका र काम गर्ने तरिकामा अब अहिले हामीले फरक ल्याउनु पर्ने परिस्थिति छ। त्यो परिस्थितिलाई पनि मध्यनजर गर्दै हामी अगाडि बढ्नु पर्नेछ। र म यो अगाडि बढ्ने क्रममा पनि हामीले हाम्रो नेपालमा सामाजिक क्षेत्रलाई राष्ट्रिय गौरवको कार्यक्रमको क्षेत्रको रूपमा रूपान्तरण गर्ने सोचका साथ हामीले अगाडि बढिरहेका छौँ। यस अवसरमा सामाजिक सङ्घ संस्था र नागरिक अभियन्ताहरूलाई पनि समय अनुकूल हामी परिचालन र रूपान्तरण गर्दै अगाडि बढ्ने जुन नेपाल सरकारको सोच छ, त्यसको निम्ति म पुनः फेरि पनि सबैलाई सहयोग गर्नको निम्ति र त्यसै किसिमको सहकार्य गर्दै अगाडि बढ्नको निम्ति म अनुरोध गर्न चाहन्छु। र अन्तमा हामी दिगो विकासको लक्ष्यलाई अगाडि बढाउनको निम्ति हामी शान्तिपूर्ण र समावेशी समाजलाई प्रबन्धन गर्नको निम्ति सबैको हामी सञ्चारमा होस्, सबैको आर्थिक क्षेत्रमा होस्, सबै क्षेत्रमा पहुँचको सुनिश्चित गर्नको निम्ति पनि नेपाल सरकारले आफ्नो ठाउँबाट हामीले यो एसडिजी गोललाई पनि हामी पुरा गर्नेछौँ। हामीले राष्ट्रिय अन्तर्राष्ट्रिय क्षेत्रमा प्रतिबद्धता गरेका नेपाल पक्षले हस्ताक्षर गरेको कुरोलाई पनि नेपाल सरकार जहिले पनि त्यसलाई कार्यान्वयन गर्नको निम्ति प्रतिबद्धता व्यक्त गर्न चाहन्छु र पुनः म काठमाडौँ डेमोक्रेसी फोरम 2020बाट सम्पन्न घोषित कार्यक्रमहरू र नेपाल सरकारको तर्फबाट गर्नुपर्ने सुझावहरू र नेपाल सरकारको तर्फबाट कार्यान्वयन गर्नुपर्ने सहयोग गर्नुपर्ने कुरोमा म काठमाडौँ डेमोक्रेसी फोरमबाट पारित नीति कार्यक्रम र सल्लाह सुझावलाई पुनः नेपाल सरकारको तर्फबाट सहयोग र कार्यान्वयन गर्ने कुरोमा प्रतिबद्धता पनि व्यक्त गर्न चाहन्छु। यो सम्मेलनमा सबै देश विदेशबाट सहभागी हुनुहुने महामहिम राजदूतज्यू, अन्य हाम्रा नेपालका र अन्य राष्ट्रका संसारभरका सबै प्रतिनिधिज्यूहरू प्रति म हार्दिक शुभकामना व्यक्त गर्न चाहन्छु र यो काठमाडौँ डेमोक्रेसी फोरमलाई जुन देश विदेशबाट सहयोग पुर्याउनु हुने यसलाई सम्पन्न गर्नुहुने सबैप्रति मैले आभार प्रकट गर्दै म यो कार्यक्रममा फेरि पनि शुभकामना व्यक्त गर्दै म बिदा लिन चाहन्छु। जय नेपाल।
Great. Thank you so much for those encouraging remarks. We'll go ahead and call on our next speaker to give us their congratulatory remarks. We have the Honorable Min Bahadur Shahi, member and spokesperson of the National Planning Commission. I give the floor to you.
Thank you, Sue. The chief guest of Kathmandu Democracy Forum, Honorable Mr. Parvat Gurung, Minister for Information and Communication Technology and spokesperson of Government of Nepal, Your Excellency Mr. Park Chung Sok, Ambassador to Nepal, the Republic of Korea, Mr. Thomas Garreta, Secretary General, Community of Democracies, Mr. Ichal Supriyadi, Secretary General, Asia Democracy Network, Mr. Jitaram Lama, Chairperson, NGO Federation of Nepal, government representatives, civil society organizations leaders, activists, media person. Ladies and gentlemen, first and foremost, it is my immense pleasure to welcome you all from the birthplace of Gautam Buddha and the land of the Himalayas. On behalf of the Government of Nepal, National Planning Commission, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for selecting Kathmandu, Nepal, to organize such an august gathering. I believe that it will greatly help to strengthen our full functional democratic path by sharing the experiences of democratic values, systems, and practices across the Asia region as well as other parts of the world. I would like to thank all the organizers for inviting me as a speaker in this forum. It is my honor to take part of this program and would like to express my sincere thanks to all organizers. With respect to promoting a comprehensive democratic system, Nepal has adopted the participatory constitution in 2015 by the world's one of the rare democratic practices of constitutional assembly elected by the people. The constitution and its adaptation were based on the democratic principles, the rule of law, respect for human rights, judicial independence, separation of power, and checks and balance between the major organs of the state, that is the judiciary, executive, and legislature. It has well recognized to protecting and promoting social and cultural solidarity, tolerance and harmony, and unity in diversity by recognizing the multilingual, multi-religious, multicultural, and diverse regional characteristics, respect to democratic norms and values like people's competitive multi-party democracy system of governance, civil liberties, fundamental rights, human rights, adult franchise, periodic elections, full freedom of the press, and independent, impartial, and competent judiciary and concept of rule of law. Concept of rule. Constitutional provisions, including economic, social, and cultural rights, periodic and voting system with both proportionate and first past the post practices, and affirmative actions for marginalized groups. It has ensured a 33% representation of women in parliament. It has one of the most progressive provisions in terms of women participation in power and representation of traditionally marginalized groups. Traditionally marginalized groups. Nepal has ensured a fair judiciary system with separation of power adopted in constitution. It has been well functional with advisory function, judicial function, protection of people's rights and freedom as defined by the constitution. At the same time, the constitutional bodies have been functional to ensure fair and transparent governance. The constitution has ensured basic human rights and social justice, guaranteeing 31 fundamental rights to the citizens. These includes the right to life of dignity, freedom of expression and association, religious and cultural freedom, right to equality, to name a few. Nepal has been effectively implementing a federal system with democratically elected governments, ensuring inclusive representation. It has contributed to strengthening grassroots democratic values and practices by respecting citizen opinions and expression through the periodic election. These democratic exercises have greatly supported empowering, advocating, and building awareness, especially to women, marginalized, and excluded communities through formal and legitimate participation in the decision-making process. The election system of Nepal has ensured inclusive representation. Inclusive representation and participation by promoting democratic exercise at all levels. Nepal has ensured to form freedom of association or unions and peaceful assembly by adopting the principle of non-violence. It has complemented and intersected with other civil and political rights as well by contributing to foster a culture of open democracy, enable non-violent participation in public affairs. Civil society organizations are free to exercise their rights, contribute to socio-economic transformation, and play the role of the watchdog. The government of Nepal is committed to protect and ensure civic space at all levels. The government is promoting liberty of thoughts and freedom of expression and respect to diverse beliefs as values of democracy and protection of civil rights of people have been well recognized in both policy provisions and their effective execution. Sorry, taking long time. It's my laptop is getting some. As Nepal has endorsed and ratified several international treaties and instruments reflecting the principle of peace and harmony. Those treaties and instruments include the Charter of the United Nations, human rights, humanitarian law, environment, trade, regional instruments. An inclusive society with social justice principle is promoted with the provision and practice of social security and social protection schemes. The government of Nepal has been implementing various social security and protection schemes that have helped to reduce inequality and promote the dignity of those communities who are marginalized and disadvantaged from the basic facilities. The government of Nepal has been implementing its 15th periodic plan with specific visions, goals, and targets in line with the SDGs. The government is always eager to introduce and adjust policies and programs to focus on the groups and communities farthest behind. Based on the experience, Nepal is going to prepare a Leave No One Behind national framework to address the sectoral prospects and problems. For this, it has focused on collaboration and partnership with international development partners, civil society organizations, financial institutions, and private sector, both at national and international levels. Nepal has made significant structural transformation by adopting a federal governance system. Some of the examples include 7 provinces, 753 local units, amending over 400 existing acts, effective implementation of fiscal federalism. This is a historic and unprecedented intervention of devolution of power to the local governments, making them accountable for effective service delivery and wider participation. The government is committed to ensuring peace and social justice that can help establish a culture of peace. Therefore, we envisioned an institutional mechanism for justice and participation for all. These mechanisms have paved the way for inclusive growth and development. Nepal is no exception to suffer from the ongoing COVID-19 crisis that has affected every aspect of human life across the globe. It has compelled us to ruminate and act to adapt to this global pandemic situation with new and innovative alternatives to tackle poverty, inequality, unemployment, economic recession, etc. That so we can be back into normal. Last but not least, I would like to urge international communities, civil society organizations, and activists for your meaningful engagement to advocate and lobby for least developed countries for equal access, availability, and fair distribution of the vaccine. Thank you once again to organizers, and I wish for the success of the program. Thanks indeed. Over to you, Sue.
Thank you so much. We'll go ahead to our last but not least speaker for the opening session. We have the Honorable Park Jong-seok. He's the Ambassador of the Republic of Korea to Nepal. Ambassador, I give the floor to you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. Can you see my face?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
All right. Honorable Parbat Guru, Minister for Communication and Information Technology of Government of Nepal. Honorable Bahadur Shahi, Spokesperson of National Planning Commission. Mr. Jitram Lama, President of NGO Federation of Nepal. Civil society representatives and distinguished delegates. Good afternoon. First of all, I'd like to thank you for inviting me to the online Kathmandu Democracy Forum as special guest. I'm grateful for giving me the opportunity to make some remarks at this wonderful occasion. As we are all aware, SDGs are vital to achieve progress that is sustainable and to make sure that no one is left behind. As many experts in this field already know, progress in a country does not only mean the increase of per capita income. It also means that an average person in a country has access to justice and security, has equality in terms of job opportunities, and has the freedom to speak a right. I also believe economic prosperity, freedom, and security go hand in hand for the nation's progress. Therefore, I believe SDG 16 is necessary for all countries, either developed or developing. In particular, I heard that at this forum, civil society organizations will present their SDG 16 monitoring reports focused on the impacts of the COVID-19 and explore how the COVID-19 pandemic has affected our lives through the lens of SDG 16 framework. As we have seen from human history, when people face unexpected difficulties, most of the burdens are imposed on the vulnerable groups. The COVID-19 epitomizes these incidents and disasters. It is causing economic crisis and political, social, and cultural disruption, especially hurting those who are already vulnerable or living in fragile and conflict-affected countries. Therefore, it is very timely for us to take stock of the unprecedented risk we face in our work for peaceful, just, and inclusive societies. We have to manage the pandemic while also strengthening governance, ensuring the distribution of resources, and making justice for more accessible. Since I'm ambassador of the Republic of Korea to Nepal, let me briefly mention the progress of SDGs in Nepal. I believe that all quarters of Nepal are working to achieve SDG 16. Nepal promulgated a constitution in 2015, which made Nepal a federal country. And by the end of 2017, elections were successfully conducted at the federal, state, and local levels. And through this main constitutional documents, government has passed several laws to make sure that the average citizen feels safe and that they can count on the government to provide justice and opportunities. I'm also aware that civil societies and nonprofit organizations, such as the NGO Federation of Nepal, have tirelessly worked with the government, private sector, and all other parties concerned. Civil societies have reached to the far-off places of Nepal and voiced the poor person's concerns to the government and private sector. With these tenacious efforts, I believe Nepal will achieve SDG 16 goals successfully. Lastly, I hope that the forum will be a grand success and continue to raise awareness to the private sector and the governments about sustainable development in the current COVID-19 crisis. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, and making time for us. And we want to thank again to the Republic of Korea for their generous support for these democracy forums, as well as the government of Nepal for being with us today to support the presenters. So we'll go ahead and close the opening ceremony and we'll go right into the first session. We today have presenters from South and Central Asia, 6 groups who have researched on Bangladesh, India, Kazakhstan, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. So before I hand it over to the moderator for that session, I will be releasing a poll. We want to ask the audience to make this as interactive as possible. We'll be sending a series of questions to see how the audience is actually experiencing COVID and how that has impacted them. And based on the answers that we collect through the poll that pops up on your screen, we'll go ahead and compare those answers to how that fares with whatever we have heard from the presenters. And then also, if anyone in the audience have any questions, please feel free to use the question and answer box on the bottom of your screen, and then we'll be collecting answers or questions for the presenters. Great. So without further ado, then I'll go ahead and introduce the moderator to the first session. We have Mr. Anselmo Lee. He's been he's been very critical in leading this. He's been working with the whole group in guiding them through this research process. And he is the senior advisor to ADN, as well as he's a professor at the Kyunghee University Global Academy of Future Civilizations. I will hand it over to you, Anselmo. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sue. Congratulations, successful. Sorry, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, okay. Thank you and congratulations, all the organizers. Successful opening. I'm very happy to be a facilitator, moderator of this session. We have about 3 hours and 2 hours for mainly presentation and 1 hour for discussion. I believe we have a program detail. We have 6 speakers and then 2 discussants and the panel, and then we have open discussion. Since not everybody is familiar with this, what we are doing in this Kathmandu Democracy Forum, I prepared a PowerPoint to introduce the project we have been doing, so-called the Kathmandu Monitoring Project about COVID-19, democracy, human rights, and SDG, before we make 6 presentations, okay? And also, I believe the Sue will send to the participant online the draft Kathmandu Declaration we have prepared based on our discussion and also presentation. We want to have a more input from participants before we finalize tomorrow and for adoption at the closing session, the last day, that's the day after tomorrow. So let me present to you the PowerPoint, which is an overview of what we have done so far, and also quick summary of our observation of what's happening in Asia, COVID-19 and civic space. Okay, can you see it in the screen, the PowerPoint?
Yes.
All right. So you can see this is Asia map, and then we have 13 countries. Unfortunately, not all, but we hope next year to get more countries to make it all blue or purple, complete whole Asia. At the moment, there are 13 countries, Kazakhstan from Central Asia, and then 5 countries from Asia, India, Pakistan, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and also 5 countries from Southeast Asia, that are Cambodia, and Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines, and Singapore, and also 2 from Northeast Asia. There's Japan and Mongolia. These are 13 countries. And since this is a 4th forum, Democracy Forum, I want to briefly introduce a history of the Democracy Forum, which was mentioned by Sue and many other speakers, but not detailed, but just picture. Unfortunately, we cannot go to Nepal, so we want to have the memory, our memory of the previous forums. As you know, the first one was Busan. This was 3 years ago. Some of us were in Busan in January 2018. This is the first Busan Democracy Forum about SE16 and democracy. And then second, it was Ulaanbaatar. So we had a very good meeting in Ulaanbaatar the last year. And then we have also C20 summit. We have Tokyo Democracy Forum as a part of C20 summit on G20. You know? So this was Japan. I see Jitram is reading the statement, the photo in Tokyo. Jitram, do you remember this photo?
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, okay. And then, okay, these are C20. And this was Busan. Busan continued to hold the Busan Democracy Forum last year, but main topic was on SE16 and global civic education. So Busan, they will have again this year and November. So invitation will be sent to you, you know. So Busan continues. Okay, so now we are in Kathmandu, you know. So this is the third official forum, Democracy Forum. We hope to continue next year with the support from Korean government in partnership with the community democracy and many others. So these are the three objectives of monitoring project. Since this is an online conference, so we decided to develop this monitoring project for last 3 months, 13 countries, and then 6 themes. They've been working together and discussing, and then the training workshop, and then exchange of opinions, and also some debates to protect and the expanding civic space in Asia in the context of COVID-19, and also build CSO capacity, and also strengthen collaboration and partnership. These are the 3 specific objectives of this monitoring project, which is a part of Kathmandu Democracy Forum. So these are the 13 countries, as I mentioned in the map. And also these are the 6 themes: inequality, Dalit, migrants in ASEAN, in whole Asia, disinformation, and refugees. So these are 6 organizations. It's a very participatory process so far. So now, based on the research done by national and also thematic reports, I want to show the overview of where we are in terms of COVID-19. Okay, these are statistics. So you can see your own country. We have a South Asia, we have 8 countries South Asia, and 11 Southeast Asia, and 6 Northeast Asia, and 5 Central Asia. Okay, so you can see average, the total number of deaths, and also confirmed cases, and also average per 1 million. Because that data is very important. For instance, India, number of the deaths, confirmed cases highest among many countries, because India has a huge, large population. But when it comes to average, it's a different picture. And the right column, there is a top 20 countries in terms of number of deaths. Mainly Europe and Central America. We cannot see any Asian countries top 20. You know? Okay, so these are the general overview. And then this one also give us another view about where we are. So world average as of 1st November, 154, you know, per million. This is the world average. All Asian countries except Kyrgyzstan, we are below world average. That means our performance was not that bad, you know, compared to other continents, especially Europe and Central America. As you see in the table, Belgium, US, which is now they are electing their own new president, 712 per million is average. Spain, UK, Italy, France, all the powerful G7, G20 countries, they are very high, much higher than world average, this situation, you know. That does not mean Asia, people are safe. Many people are suffering in Asia. So we have to find a way how to reduce this suffering, how to prevent and then mitigate, and also continue to work for SDG and human rights in the context of COVID-19. So you can see also there are some differences within Asia, South Asia, Southeast Asia, Northeast Asia, Central Asia. So today's session 1, we are going to focus on South Asia and Central Asia with the 6 country presentations. But I think important to look at the 6 country presentation from broader perspective. That's why I'm sharing with you this overview data so that you can have a international perspective and discussions. Okay, these are the country data. There's a total number of cases and also total number of deaths. As you can see, India is the highest in the number of confirmed cases and number of deaths among whole Asia because India has a large population. And then relatively Northeast Asia, Central Asia, much lower than average. But within South Asia and Southeast Asia, there's a big difference among countries. For instance, South Asia, we have Bangladesh, India, Pakistan. These are top three countries. So we are going to get presentation. Why so high, you know? And among 11 countries, Southeast Asia, which we are going to discuss tomorrow, Indonesia, Philippines is very high. You know? Okay, so we need to analyze why such a big difference. And then we have Northeast Asia and Central Asia. Oops. And then this is another data about average per 1 million. And then there's a different picture, you know. India will go down, you know. And then Maldives going up. If you look at in terms of average. And Singapore is very high, average per million. And Northeast Asia, and then Central Asia. Okay, so you can see your own country so more objectively in terms of international comparison. And then this is a comparison among 4 sub-regions: South Asia, Southeast Asia, Northeast Asia, and Central Asia. The next one is the trend about global deaths by country. The India is going up too high, you know, so we cannot put in the graph. And then followed by Kazakhstan and Bangladesh, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Kazakhstan, Sri Lanka, Nepal. These are some of the trends. But this is South Asia and Central Asia. See, India is very high. And also Northeast Asia and Southeast Asia. These are the trends last several months, starting from February to September. Okay, these are the trends. So now let's look at inter-regional comparison between Asia and other continents. So as you see in terms of confirmed cases, Asia is very high, highest among all continents, probably because of India. India, the record is really high. But when it comes to average per million, Asia is relatively low, you know. For instance, North America, US is the highest, followed by South America, Europe, then Asia. Africa is very low, you know, luckily, you know. Maybe not yet started, you know. Okay, so these are the international comparison. And then these are top 20 countries, as I mentioned, mainly the Europe and Central America, you know. So now within sub-region, so now we are zooming in, you know. So these are the data about South Asia in terms of total confirmed cases and the total number of deaths. So India top, followed by Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Nepal. Sri Lanka, Maldives, Bhutan, Afghanistan, extremely low. So we have 2 group of countries, South Asia. Okay. And then this is also per 1 million. Then Maldives is the highest, you know, in terms of the number of cases and also deaths per 1 million. This is Northeast Asia. This is for our discussion tomorrow. And then Southeast Asia. So we'll discuss tomorrow. And this is Central Asia. So we have one presentation about Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan, number of cases very high, but when it comes to the number of deaths, you can see both confirmed cases and also total number of deaths. And these are per million. Then Kyrgyzstan is a top. And unfortunately, we don't have a data about Turkmenistan. So now democracy and civic space. As you know, main focus of our monitoring project is impact of COVID-19 on civic space from the perspective of human rights and SDGs. So I want to introduce where we are now in terms of civic space and democracy. Can you see these colorful maps? This is according to Civicus. They've been monitoring civic space last several years, and there are 5 categories: open, narrow, obstructed, repressed, closed. Unfortunately, there is no country on the open category. But only 2, narrow means not open, but close to open. That means relatively okay. Only 2 countries, that is Japan and South Korea. And then followed by obstructed and repressed, closed. You can see the yellow color. There's Mongolia, Kazakhstan, Nepal, and many of the Southeast Asian countries. And almost all except Nepal and Bhutan, Sri Lanka, South Asia on the repressed. There's a shrinking civic space. So you can see what kind of challenges we are facing in different sub-regions: Southeast Asia, South Asia, Northeast Asia, and Central Asia. Next one is IDEA, international organization. And they also provide very interesting data in terms of 4: representative government, fundamental rights, check on government, impartial administration. So you can compare these 13 countries, their record, which country is more advanced in terms of democracy. Generally, I think Japan and South Korea, and also some parts, for instance, transparency, Singapore is much better than other countries. And Sri Lanka and Nepal also relatively good. And then this is a democracy index by economists. So you can see from your own eyes, you can compare among these 13 countries. But 13 countries plus South Korea, South Korea does not produce a monitor report, but we added South Korea. So we have 14 countries comparison. And then these are human rights. And these also civil and political rights by Freedom House, NGO in United States. Among 5 countries in South Asia, India, Sri Lanka, Nepal, relatively okay, but Bangladesh, Pakistan is facing a lot of challenges, according to Freedom House Civil and Political Rights Monitoring Report. This is also another one, World Freedom Index, very similar, So you can see the very similar patterns among different index, and the Human Freedom Index. And then this is a Press Freedom Index, Press of Freedom Index. High means not very free, Lower is better, So according to index, I think South Korea, Japan is okay, but Singapore, Kazakhstan, and Bangladesh, Cambodia, Pakistan is facing a lot of challenges in terms of freedom, press freedom, according to this index. We have a Human Rights Defender Protection Index by UN, also international ICRN, and the India is very high compared to other countries. That means very dangerous and also very vulnerable, you know. A lot of cases of human rights violation against human rights defenders. India, Philippines, Thailand, and Cambodia, Pakistan. These are the top 5 countries. And then corruption perception index by Transparency International. Very interestingly, Singapore is a top. That means clean. Human rights index, Singapore not very high, but when it comes to corruption, Singapore is highest among Asian countries, followed by Japan, South Korea, and Cambodia is one of the lowest. And Bangladesh also the lowest among 5 countries in South Asia. And then this is a rule of law, very similar to other index, like a transparency. Okay, so this is just an overview. According to monitoring report by international organizations, some intergovernmental, private, or NGO or research institution. I'm introducing this one as a main reference for our analysis and also discussion. So when you present your own country, you keep in mind, you know, why such a big difference? How can we reduce the gap? How can you build solidarity to support some countries that are facing some challenges in terms of human rights and democracy? So from now on, so we have a 6-country presentation. So they will explain to you about specific country situation. And then we will have a international discussion, which means international comparison after listening to 6 presentation. Okay, lastly, thank you for listening and watching this presentation. All right. So this is my job as a facilitator of this project, but now I want to play the role of moderator from now. You know? So now we have 6 speakers from Central Asia and South Asia. So you have about 12 minutes with a PowerPoint. Okay, let's begin with Bangladesh. Okay, Sahid, are you ready to make a presentation?
Yes.
Okay. Can you upload your own PowerPoint? Or Sue, are you helping or?
Okay, this is from Bangladesh.
Yep.
Can I open my PowerPoint presentation? This is Shoaib speaking from Bangladesh.
Yes, you should be able to share your screen.
Yeah, I think you can upload yourself. It's much,
Okay, thank you.
much better, more effective, you know, if you can control, you know.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay,
just, can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes, coming up soon. Yeah, yes.
Okay. Can I start?
Yeah, you can start.
So can I start? Okay. First of all, I would like to convey our heartiest gratitude to ADN and KMDF 2020 for creating this opportunity. And on behalf of Bangladesh team, I would like to present our Bangladesh monitoring report on the SDG 16+ during the COVID-19 pandemic. And Bangladesh is one of the most densely populated countries in the world and bordering by the Bay of Bengal between India and Myanmar. And for more than 40 years of the struggle, Bangladesh has reduced the poverty rate from half of the population to less than a third, achieved the Millennium Development Goal. And Bangladesh, unfortunately, regularly falls prey to a series of natural calamities, including floods, cyclone, drought, and increasing salinity in soil and water. The COVID-19 pandemic is rampaging over countries across the globe, and Bangladesh is also facing its share of severe impact, both in terms of loss in lives and slowdown of economy. Our organization, Eco-Social Development Organization, started its journey in 1988 with a novel vision to stand in solidarity with the poor and marginalized communities in Bangladesh. And concerning the COVID-19 situation in Bangladesh, as well as the globally, we face the different types of crisis. Obviously, it also contributed some new agenda and opportunities. Now it's a reality that the SDGs basic philosophy, no one lagging behind, is the reality. And without the holistic development, inclusive and the most appropriate way, it is really difficult to survive all over the global citizen. And major impacts of COVID-19 on people's life, health, and livelihoods and their human rights in Bangladesh. In terms of the health issues, still now Bangladesh has limited coronavirus testing capacities, and as a result, the situation is and different types of vulnerability have occurred. Due to the limited health facilities, the health service management is comparatively vulnerable. Patients with serious complications are being returned as the no-free ICU. And since the COVID-19 lockdown in March 2020, there has been a sharp decrease in the number of people accessing basic primary healthcare services. Our first confirmed case occurred on 8 March 2020, and up to 30 October, that is more than 463,000. And first death on 18 March, and death till 30 October more than 5,900. And in terms of the lives and livelihoods, the humanitarian impact is likely to be among already at risk: the ethnic communities, low-income families, people with disabilities, the returning migrant, and the extreme vulnerable communities. In terms of the education, due to the school closure, the underprivileged children, they have seriously faced the crisis, and it is depicting that they are at risk of increasing the number of out of schools and drop out from the mainstream education. We know the food security is the composition of 4 components: and food availability, access to food, food utilization, and food stability. And all these 4 dimensions directly or indirectly challenged due to the COVID-19 in Bangladesh. A significant portion of the private sector job holders, they lost their jobs, and in some cases, wages has already deducted half. And a large number of migrant workers have been sent back to Bangladesh, and many are in constant fear of being sent back due to the impacts of COVID-19. And obviously, the older people are more vulnerable to infection due to COVID-19. And now I would like to talking about some issues regarding the major impact of the COVID-19 on civic space and democracy in Bangladesh. The lack of democratic decision-making and multi-party participation has also been paired with an alarming risk of lack of governance and accountability. Government is less interested to involve other political parties and civil societies to overcome the COVID-19. And some elected local leaders have already identified as a misappropriation of the relief, and they have already punished by the government, and government has decided to, instead of the local leaders, tasked 64 most senior civil servants to coordinate the relief distribution. This shows how the crisis management has become increasingly bureaucratized, and reliable, accurate, and accessible information is highly needed for overcoming the COVID situation. But unfortunately, some of the cases, government officials, including the medical personnel, instructed to not speak out to the media regarding the issues. And the Digital Security Act 2018, also one of the barrier for collect the different information of COVID and COVID-related issue. And the right to peaceful assembly is a fundamental freedom, and it's also some limitation in our country. And one of the major concern in the democracy and civic space that lack of coordination between the different government agencies and local government. And as a result, in some cases, the actions do not work perfectly. And unfortunately, the role of the opposition political parties and private sectors is also less impressive considering the civil engagement capabilities. And now I would like to share about the government response regarding the COVID-19 in terms of the democratic governance and civic participation. Yes, the government has taken some major many policy measures in response to the COVID-19, including the social safety net and other support programs for low-income people. Government has provided 5 million poor families impacted by the COVID-19 and cash assistance per family equivalent of USD $30. And government have Bangladesh had taken right preventive measure in the Rohingya refugee camp, and the total amount of this stimulus package will be the equivalent of 8,660 million of US dollar. And government, in terms of the SDG, government have already set up in Bangladesh the different SDG affairs office under the Prime Minister Secretariat. The VNR have successfully prepared on 2020 with the participation of different stakeholders. And enhancing the access of citizens to essential quality medicines has already produced in Bangladesh, manufactured in Bangladesh, and covered the drugs needs for the local country and already export to the outside of this country. And Bangladesh Election Commission has already conducted many election, by-election of parliament and the local government election within this period. But people is less interested to using their voting rights due to COVID, as well as poor credibility of the election commission. Some of the scandal have already done, incident has done within this period, like the mask and supplies and others, and government take necessary action. But for political commitment, highly needed, strong political commitment in combination of the civil society and media for reducing the corruption and activating a strong anti-corruption commission of this country. And the visual and presentable role of National Human Rights Commission is not impressive. And finally, need to more for the government strong commitment to make institutions of states and society for responsive, inclusive, transparent, and accountable to an empowered and responsible citizenry for changing lives and improving the quality of the services. And if we are talking about the assessment of the CSO's response, first of all, that is very unfortunate that in Bangladesh, the absence of single coordinating and networking alliance of the CSOs is a major gap for appropriately communicating, coordinating with the government and the international actors. And the other point is that a big gap observed in communication, coordination, and common plan of actions in between the NGOs and the local and national level. A few portion of the NGOs have most effective strategic partnership with the government, but it should be needed to scale up. And proper participant selection process also be needed to more stronger. And the major focus will be needed to maintain the humanitarian standards, professional ethics, and appropriately oriented CSO staffs. And need to easy, understandable, and local language-based communication tools, and a pool of resource organization at national and regional level needed for capacitate the local level CSOs. And all response plans, including the resources, funds, and investment must be ensured through an appropriate way. And participatory, inclusive, and people-centered process is one of the positive side and stronger side of the CSOs. And now, I would like to share our humble proposal to the government of Bangladesh regarding the SDG and the COVID issues. The institutional framework for SDG implementation in Bangladesh does not recognize the CSOs as partner of government. Need to recognition of CSOs as partner of SDG implementation. And the activities of the NGOs are currently getting constrained due to lack of funds. Government's financing is importantly most effective for CSOs. Sustainability as well as the target group will also be greatly benefited due to NGOs' expertise. Government maybe scale up the anti-COVID interventions through the partnership with the CSOs, like the health awareness, test and patient support, relief distribution, and reaching to the underserved, etc. And need to integrating CSOs in the government anti-COVID plan of action. And our humble proposals to the international organizations, one of the proposals that need to funding support for the international organization. Some of the international organizations have been continuing their strong funding, but need to strengthening and expanding such fund due to the present scenario is more vulnerable. And at the same time, the technical and knowledge-based support also needed for the CSO staff for combating the corona crisis and prioritize the sectors and interventions for investing the fund, and at the same time the coordination, creating the linkage in between the government agencies, the UN agencies, the local partners, and the international agencies, and documenting the experience, setting up of mapping mechanism, and strengthening the social service workforce for addressing the problem. And the scope of CSOs in Asia work together internationally, regionally, and globally. Yes, there is a widened scope to work together through the joint networking and advocacy for international funds and technical supports, learning, knowledge sharing, and showcasing the best practices, create a platform where all like-minded CSOs exchange their ideas and information about the action against COVID. The resourceful CSO provide technical assistance to other CSOs, communication, coordination, and cooperation between the CSO government and regional international development partners and organizations, and promote and encourage research and documentation among member CSOs in the areas of policy and development, and compile and maintain a comprehensive directory of all member CSOs in Asia and collect information and statistical data about programs with a wider view of dissemination. And it should be needed to great liaison in between the government and international agencies, through the leading by the ADN and others, and increase the role of civil society by strengthening its voice in policy and decision-making at national, regional, and international level, and promote the civil dialogue between the civil society actors, state institutions, regional policy actors, including the private sectors and others, and develop advocacy knowledge and skills among the civil society actors as a base for greater impact, and spreads the culture of human rights, as well as helping with creating policies and legislation that facilitate the CSO's work and create the suitable environment for it. And finally, nurturing and promoting equity and equality, gender, ethnic, cultural diversification, and reducing all sorts of discriminations and extremism in the Asia region, and empowering the marginalized and the poor. In a nutshell, according to the guideline, that is our presentation. And on behalf of ESDO from Bangladesh, I'd like to again convey our heartiest gratitude to all organizers, listeners, and viewers. Thanks to all.
Thank you, Shahid, very much. I'm sorry we cannot give the full, to express our appreciation loudly because it is an online conference, but I believe you feel, our response through this screen. Thank you very much for your presentation. So you made an excellent presentation within time, 13 minutes. Congratulations. First start is very important, time management, my job. And also you cover very important points. For those who are not joining this conference from online, the YouTube, we have 5 guiding questions for all the presentations, standard one. First one is impact of COVID-19 on people's rights, especially human rights, and also impact of COVID-19 on civic space, and then our government response to COVID-19, and also CSO action on COVID-19, and also our proposals and recommendations to our government, and also our civil society. So these are the basic structure of presentation. So all the national presenters will follow this one. And also I believe you received the online questions which pop up during the presentation on your screen, right? So as Sue mentioned, so we send out to you the online questions about to get your opinion about key issues. What are the impact of COVID-19 according to your view? Which group are most affected, and then which human rights issues? And then what are the important factors in terms of effective response to COVID-19? And so on and so on. Please answer those questions online. So we show the result after 6 presentations. Then we will have an interactive discussion with this public survey and also your country presentation. Okay, so please, while listening to presentation, please answer those online questions. So now let's move to the next presentation. So next one will be India, because we are going to follow country alphabetical order. So first with the Bangladesh, India, then we have Nepal, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, then we go to Central Asia. So now, the Arjun, you have 12 minutes for presentation, please.
Thank you, Anselmo. I've just started my screen sharing. I hope it's visible to all the
Yes,
participants.
visible, yes, yes.
Yes, thank you. For at the start, I would like to thank KMDF, COD, ADN, Anselmo and team for organizing this special event, for cross-sharing and knowledge exchange on COVID-19 and democracy and civic space. I think it's very important at this point of time that we as civil society organizations come together and talk about these issues, because as we've seen that in majority parts of the world that COVID-19 is now becoming a political issue, whereas it is a much more deeper social issue that should be taken up actively by civil society. So I thank the organizers for giving this opportunity to us, Vani, to share this presentation based on our experiences with coronavirus and how civil society has been responding actively to COVID-19. Just to give a brief context, India, as you know, as Anselmo mentioned in his previous presentation, India has been reeling under a very difficult situation with the COVID-19, and it has actually become so difficult for us that now we are actually living in the new normal, and many of our people have now normalized. They have come out on the roads. They are actually normalizing with the new situation, and it's becoming very difficult as to containing the virus. And as that, we already crossed 8 billion now. As of today, about 8 billion cases have already been confirmed. After US, I think India is the next hotspot. And moreover, I think there'll be no relief until a new vaccine comes up. And that will be an issue that we'll always have to contend with. So without much ado, I think we can start the presentation from India's side. So just a brief outlay of the data points that we see are the whole coronavirus issue that started was actually in January, but as you can see, the major impact was felt in the wee months of March, early March actually, because that was the time when many more patients were getting infected and it was actually getting itself into community spread. There were more contacts that were coming. The first recorded case was on 30th January, and by 31st March, we had about 1,000 cases. And then you can see as it we have about 8 million cases totally confirmed. And this is despite the increased testing that is taking place in India. We have increased testing. We have actually increased the capacity of our health infrastructure. But still, I think as experts have seen and they have commented that this was likely to be increasing, and there's going to be a steady progression in the in the next year into the next year, and we can expect that this mark will be reached to about 10 million or 10 million plus by early February or possibly in March. So this is going to be a very difficult situation for India, and even the policymakers as to how to control it. Some will be left to the herd immunity and so they withstand, become resilient naturally to face this the coronavirus. So before getting into the whole scenario of India, there were two issues that are necessary to discuss over here. One is the COVID-19 induced twin challenges in India, because there were two things that came up very expressly. The two fault lines that coronavirus, the COVID-19 had shown to India was, one was the health challenge, that our health infrastructure was strained. We saw that there were not many hospitals. The average ratio of the 1,000, the average ratio to a person to a bed was very less, especially in the rural areas. So this actually was a major fault line. And in the early days, there was an apprehension with many people that they thought that it'll be very difficult to sustain people who have heart ailments, who have lung ailments, whether they have requisite number of ventilators to support them. So this was a health challenge that India faced when the COVID-19 situation was at its hell. Secondly, it was an economic challenge. We were the first country who actually took serious measures and gave serious thought to lockdown. And the lockdown actually grossly affected our economic situation. It disbalanced the whole macroeconomic credentials, and it has actually created a much more disastrous effect in relation when compared to the coronavirus, because we have loss of jobs, we have loss of livelihoods, we have loss of employment of people. People have lost their businesses, and recently our finance minister noted that India will be facing a zero growth this year. So you can imagine a country which has been steadily growing since 2008, which has touched about 8%, has now actually come to 0%. So this will be difficult to reverse. Many economists, many political commentators have noted that this will be a difficult situation to reverse back. It will take about 5 to 10 years down the line to make India come back on the same track. And it will require much more domestic financing by the government in terms of increasing taxation, increasing more public expenditure to boost some demand. So this is going to be a really difficult trajectory for India in the next few years. And this has obviously been directly correlated to the coronavirus. So before starting into the whole context about India, I think it's necessary to understand the lockdown and the situation it held for the civic space and how it affected the livelihood situation in India. So the lockdown, as you know, was imposed in mid-January, and it has seemingly affected a large section of population. It was it was categorically then phased out in the coming months, and but the situation remains on the economic fronts remains the same because of the lockdown. It has still has its impact upon a lot of sectors, especially manufacturing, the business sector, the private sector, and all others engaged in commercial enterprise. But a major effect of the lockdown was borne by economic breadwinners. These were people who were actually subsisting on a daily wage of about $2 a day, or having a $2 plus as a wage, as a daily wage for themselves. And these people have been engaged in the labor, in manufacture, in all sorts of private enterprise in which they have been helping around, and they largely constitute the informal economy of India. So when the lockdown was imposed, the informal economy of India was actually wiped out completely. And the these economic breadwinners were actually lost their jobs overnight. So you could see the photographs coming out in international newspapers about how people were going on foot. Migrants were traveling back to their countries, and these pictures actually were very difficult for an average citizen to actually contend with, but that was the economic cost of the lockdown.
Arjun, sorry, you have already spent half of your time. You have only 5 minutes left, so you have
sure I'll be sure yeah. So the government of India issued directives for their government enterprises to remain closed until further notice, and this actually was difficult for a lot of people to actually gain access to public delivery services. Secondly, it impacted the delivery of public goods to people. Many people were not able to get their work done during the lockdown due to cessation of all transportation and economic activity. All government offices were closed. And of course, the lockdown was the major impact of lockdown was felt in the supply of essential services when the government made clear directives that these services will not face any problems. Despite this, there were blockages in the supply chain. What was the effect of the lockdown? If we see as I earlier mentioned, it disrupted all forms of economic activity. It had cost about the livelihoods about 360 million people. That was affected. Livelihoods of about 360 million people were affected. It pushed unemployment among salaried and labor classes. It affected the employment and livelihood of women because a lot of women are engaged in the informal economy and they had actually lost their livelihoods. Supply chain to the poor, marginalized dependents, that are those who are the disabled people, the weaker sections of society, they actually were critically affected. When we look at the health measures that were taken, initially the health measures was minimally utilized during the start of the pandemic. However, normal services were critically affected owing to the increase of number of patients. As I said, this actually brought out a fault line that a strained public health infrastructure, limited number of beds and ventilators. This actually created a situation where people were actually languishing outside the hospitals. They could not they cannot afford high end hospitals, private hospitals, and whatever government hospitals were left, they could not accommodate their capacity. Secondly, in June and July, this situation actually resulted in a virtual collapse of health services and was responsible for an increase in death rates because many people were not unable to access ventilators. They were unable to have any facilities for breathing. Thirdly, the situation then was actually reined in with some policy measures by the government in which quarantining was done at home, so under which people were actually made to stay quarantined at their home rather than go to hospitals. This actually effectively pulled up the strain of the hospitals, and it allowed people to recuperate at their homes. Plasma therapy was one of the major factors that helped in assuage COVID-19 complications. And of course, the majority of deaths are attributed to comorbidities and age, as in other countries also. Fatality rate, as Anselmo mentioned earlier in his slides, that it still continues to be the lowest in comparison to other countries in India. Of course, India was home to social distancing also. The lockdown was one of the first measures taken to ensure that social distancing is enforced. However, this was then critically, this was taken out and phased out through unlock phases in which government offices were opened, transportation was opened, and now we are technically under a no lockdown period in which we can move through. There's no restriction on freedom. There's no restriction in movement of people. There's no restriction of meeting people. Of course, yes, some enterprises are ensuring that we follow social distancing. Testing. If there were two tests that were conducted. First, there was the RT-PCR test, that was the co-branded test. This was brought in to replace the rapid antibody tests. Then there were the antibody tests that were being taken out. Up till 2nd November, that is on Monday, India had about 100 tests, 100 million tests that had been conducted across India. I think that's 1 crore. So I don't know how to actually translate it in English numerals, but that is about 11 million. Yeah, 11 million tests had been conducted across India. But there have been concerns raised on the quality of test kits, and there have been isolated cases of patient rights violation and discrimination by especially people of lower castes and women and tribals. They have actually said that this kind of a discrimination, but they're very isolated. Institutional access, they were, if you see, we had a couple of there were a couple of legislations that were passed by the parliament which actually resulted in some labor issues. Some difficult legislations were passed with relation to Indian CST, which I'll be covering it later in the slides. And then there were extraordinary powers that were conferred to the police. Courts have been functional. In the early days, there was difficulty in the functionality of courts, but now they are functional. Access to justice for three critical segments of the population that are the most marginalized: Dalits, tribals, and women. In India, there was a case of a Dalit lady being raped and murdered, and that had gained a lot of traction. And because there was a lot of media traction that was gaining on the ground, the local government actually enforced lockdown in that particular village, so they didn't have access to that village. That was one critical case that was necessary to bring this out over here. Many tribal groups actually felt discrimination. They had hindrances in getting access to justice. And of course, the crime rate in India with relation to women, especially during the lockdown period, had increased very drastically. It actually gone up very much high. There have been recently elections have been taking place in India. Yesterday only we started an election phase in a particular state of India, which is the most populous. And local democratic institutions are also helpful in mitigating coronavirus. One issue that has come out is the accountability and transparency of the government schemes, because we see that there's a fund that has been created by the Prime Minister of India, which has actually been very non-transparent. No information has been provided about it in the public domain. So that is where civil society activists and many social activists and parliamentarians and other opposition parties are calling upon for release of information.
Yeah. Arjun, please, can you wind up in 1 minute?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Yes. So I'll just briefly touch upon the impact on media freedom. We see that there's been an increase in fake news, in which the government brought out some strong concerns, and there was a notification by the Supreme Court. There have been isolated cases of curtailing media coverages during COVID-19. And of course, as I discussed earlier, the PM Cares Fund has been a sore point for access of information. Role of civil society. We were praised by the Supreme Court of India. We reached out to economic migrants with food and shelter services. We provided masks, raised working capital for small businesses to cope with the deteriorating economic situation, provided linkages for livelihoods for artisans and manufacturer women groups, enabled vulnerable, disabled, marginalized communities to become empowered. This was the major role which was of civil society. But when we see the assessment, there were difficult situations in which, there have been amendments in the law of the foreign contribution in which resource mobilization of NGOs is affected. There have been income tax amendments that have been introduced this year during the lockdown, which actually grant a renewable certificate on charitable organizations. There have been arbitrary and isolated moves against CSOs engaged in fundraising activities. And of course, there's no space for public consultations with civil society organizations, and increased harassment and incarceration of human rights defenders continues to be one of the major objectives of the government. So what we are recommending to the government of India to increase space for our participation in health policy, acknowledge and our support, ensure financial assistance to vulnerable sections of society, creating space for policies for protection for disabled, marginalized and children and girls and elderly, promoting local livelihoods with partnership with civil societies, and create a conducive regulatory regime for CSOs. For international organizations, we are calling upon UN to collaborate with civil society on SDGs. G20 should give more weightage to financing development initiatives. To Kathmandu Democracy Forum, we are calling upon the governments to, like India, to be more sensitive to the concerns of civil society and civic space. And on working at the national level, we are actually working around collectivizing around SDGs and COVID-19. On the regional, we are working towards at the Asia level on COVID-19 and SDGs. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak up on these issues. And thank you, Anselmo, for bearing with me.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Arjun. I'm sorry I couldn't give you more time because I know you are facing a lot of challenges, not only COVID-19, but also shrinking civic space, a lot of the regulations, restrictions, and so on. But due to time constraints, we will share all the PowerPoint after session. So those who could not write down, so you will get the text later on, So you can do only the main point for discussion and questions. Okay, so let's move to the next one. Let's go to the Nepal. Please make sure that you make a presentation within 20 minutes, which means there are many important points later part of your presentation, especially the proposals, recommendation, action plan. And so you have to make sure that you divide your time strategically, Don't spend too much time describing all the problems in the first part. Okay, whom welcome. So we have 20 minutes. Now let's go to Nepal, our host country.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to make a presentation on behalf of Nepal, NGO Federation of Nepal. So this is a presentation, that we worked together, and we have a team, and this is on behalf of the NGO Federation of Nepal, which is a member-based organization with over 6,345 member NGOs, and this is actually a national NGO platform of NGOs in Nepal. So I start with the COVID-19 data. When you see this, we had the initial cases as early as January 2023. This is possibly the first case in South Asia itself. Initially, there were very few cases, but at the end of October, we have 170,743 infections, and at that point, there were 38,584 active cases, and we had 937 deaths, unfortunately. So you can see that we have so far over 1.4 million tests at this point. When you look at the cases, we have 0.5% of deaths. 937 means this is 0.5% of the total cases. And when it comes to the infections by gender, we can see that the infection of the males is 2/3 of the total. So when we're trying to assess the impact of COVID-19, we try to keep the human rights and SDGs at the center, and mainly the areas that are affected is the life itself, life of the people, and then livelihood and economy, food and nutrition, health, education, and ultimately the poverty and inequality. These are the major areas that have been affected by COVID-19. So, of course, the people's lives, so poverty and deprivation, and this is a lot of sense of insecurity and hopelessness generally among the people. So the first area definitely directly affected is health, and people already had very much poor accessibility to health, and of course, COVID-19 has affected, beside that, the people who had chronic disease and, the people who needed regular health checkups, and they are really deprived, and there are psychosocial issues also. In recent days, when the lockdown started, we have lots of increased suicide cases. This also indicates that, we had lots of psychosocial problems that are brought about by COVID-19. So livelihood, of course, has been affected. This is mainly because of the loss of jobs, unemployment, and and the people who are the wage laborers and daily wage earners, daily breadwinners, they have been really affected, especially the poor. So all these are, again, they can be seen from the human rights perspectives, and the people who are mostly affected are the poor, women, children, LGBTI, people with disability, and the people working mostly in the informal sector. So, of course, the education needs, because the schools, colleges, all they have been, the impact on civic space and democracy. So, because of the lockdown and restrictive measures, the freedom of peaceful assembly and association has been affected, and likewise media and press freedom. We can see there are lots of cases of arrest of media persons, forceful removal of online content, shutdown of online media outlets, and threats and attacks on media persons as well. So this situation had led that there is no very low participation, public participation in all the public activities. Likewise, there are good things like, the policies, so sorry, I had unstable internet connection. Yeah. So, okay, the civic space has been affected. So policies that govern the CSOs in Nepal are still in transition. By that, I mean that, although Nepal has been changed politically, we have lots of, political, progress. But the law, the CSO Act that rules that governs the NGOs or CSOs is still old, and so there is tons of funds and resources with CSOs NGO, and for that reason they are not really able to make intervention that they want. Okay, because this COVID-19 situation also has brought about some opportunities also in terms of the use of information and communication technology. But at the same time, there are limitations, and not all the people, not all the NGOs and civil society have access to this. So there are opportunities to learn and take part in the meetings, sharings, and discussions from across the world. But digital divide has been one of the major limitations. Okay, I want to focus on the government's response on COVID-19. So first is the government that started with the rescue and evacuation of the people who were stranded abroad. And then the government really definitely came up with early closure of international borders. But, the borders were closed, but, the people, migrant workers started coming in. But it seemed that it was evident, and it appeared that, the government was really not prepared for managing those quarantine centers, to manage the influx of the migrant workers, So because of that, the quarantine centers were crowded, they had very poor hygiene and sanitation, they did not meet the standards. And okay, the people had very limited, isolation, and they did not have any facilities of testing and treatment. And these centers were not really the safe and secure places, and they did not consider the special needs of women and children. So government also formed a high-level committee to control COVID-19 and response, and it was really good. And it took some timely decisions. So government also established the COVID-19 response fund, and there are a lot of, guidelines, plans, and procedures. However, government did not really enforce the things very well. For example, lockdowns and restrictions, and so that was not really effective. So the general public perception is that the government did not do anything good beyond lockdowns and restrictions. Definitely, the government, we also listen from the government representatives that there are the good efforts, but the efforts are quite much below the public expectations. So there are the packages, definitely, but these packages and promises were not well delivered, and they are hard to receive. They are delayed. Likewise, other responses. Okay, very recently, the government has said that there will be no free test and treatment, except for the people who are really poor, helpless, and impoverished. But so it is going to have very long-term implications, serious implications that the government needs to understand and think from right now. So,
Home, I know you have a lot to say, but you have also 2 minutes to wind up, so you have to move to the...
nevertheless, some provinces and local governments are still providing some free service, and the government has given up testing, tracing, and treatment. The situation is like chaos. So okay, everything seems normal from outwardly, but things are becoming really serious, and at the point there are no hospital beds, and they are really hard to get, and people are living in home quarantine because they are not being adequately monitored, and the people are dying during home quarantine without any health services, and we see that the government's efforts are not really transparent and accountable, and we see there are excessive use of force in peaceful demonstrations also. So this means a shrinking civic space, And the government is really seems too slow to take opportunity and make use of information and communication technology. So anyway, the CSOs also have made some good efforts, and they have supported the management and of the isolation and quarantine places. In some, there are many cases where they have supported the local governments in collection of data, contact tracing and support, and they have also been involved in awareness building, advocacy campaign, relief materials, and they have also been doing monitoring and observation from their own way. At the same time, civil society networks are involved in human rights monitoring with National Human Rights Commission. This is also really good, and they have produced reports, and they have been providing civil society feedback and perspectives to that report. So these reports and reflections will be published, and we are planning to publish that in the International Human Rights Day on December 10. At the same time, we have been making the strategic plan for CSOs that what could be our role and responsibility in the COVID and post-COVID-19 context. And the CSOs have been rallying together, working together under Nepal SDGs Forum, and they're also assessing the role of the CSOs and what is really the contribution of CSO during COVID-19, and what can we make this more effective. So anyway, the is everywhere, COVID effective everywhere, but the needs are higher and resources are limited to CSOs. So it seems that for the civil society, the best role is the role, advocacy and monitoring, and this is more feasible, effective, and necessary. Although this is mainly because we don't have much resources. And proposals to the government is that
He's breaking, I think, no?
Hello, whom? I think there's a technical problem.
So,
okay.
Sorry, there was
some
internet connection problem. Sorry. I'll just come back. Sorry for that. Yes, the government needs to come up with the measures to provide relief to the people who are most affected, and there needs to be impact and needs assessment. The government needs to establish some social safety nets, and it also there should be some the focus on health infrastructure and systems. The weak has been revealed. Now we cannot go on with this. So next thing is that there need to governments to special needs to take into account the fundamental rights, the human rights responsibility to prevent, test, trace, and treatment of COVID-19.
Okay, whom I think you need to really wind up in 1 minute. You cannot read all, just highlight one or two main one and then skip to the conclusion. Okay.
All right. So in terms of international organizations, they need to enhance their the accountability mechanism, and they can also contribute or support or put pressure to the national governments, and likewise regional forums need to be more effective. This is the time like ASEAN and SAARC become more effective, and they take their roles. So civil society participation and voices need to be given space. Due space is necessary for them. At the same time, funding and debt cancellation to LDCs, scaling of the international cooperation. So likewise, technology transfer. And finally, this is the final thought, and the CSOs need to okay, localize the effort and understand and analyze the situation. So advocacy, evidence-based advocacy and campaign is really necessary, and they need to be able to hold the governments accountable and transparent in their efforts. So thank you. And because of the limited time, I couldn't go into details.
Okay, thank you very much, Hum, for your excellent presentation. Of course, I know there are a lot of, the important information and also useful proposals in your presentation. But again, the time constraint, these are our reality. Okay, let's move to the next one. Pakistan, Jia, I hope you can manage your time and then spend more time on analysis and challenge, the proposals, action, okay, rather than description of reality. Okay, Jia, you have about 12 minutes, please.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. And thank you, the organizers of Kathmandu Democracy Forum. Are you seeing my presentation?
Yes, we can see.
Okay. So when it comes to Pakistan, actually, I'm just sharing with you a couple of demographics. The biggest challenge in Pakistan is the population. It's like 220 million people. And the population growth rate is 2.5, whereas birth rate is 29.8 per thousand population, and death rate is 7.5 per thousand population. Life expectancy in Pakistan is, for female, is higher, like about 70, and for male, it's like 66. Fertility rate is like 3.5 children born per woman, which is very, very high. Infant mortality rate is 53.86 deaths per thousand lives, whereas the urban population is 35.1%. So we have large rural population in Pakistan. Interestingly, Pakistan, the expected years of schooling is 8.5, which is very low. That shows that a very large number of Pakistani population do not have secondary education, whereas about 22 million children are out of school in Pakistan. So we have 4 provinces and 2 regions. Azad Jammu and Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan are 2 different regions. Judiciary is independent, have all the layers, Supreme Court, High Court, and district level judiciary. Local government doesn't exist in Pakistan for several years, and this has a history. When there is a dictatorship in Pakistan, we always have local government functional, but when there is a democratic government in Pakistan, what you call the hybrid democracy in Pakistan, we even do not have local government functional. The current government is the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, which is like Pakistan Justice Movement, is running the affairs of the country. We have signed almost all the major global commitments, including CEDA, CRPD, Child Rights Convention, ICCPR, SDGs. But when it comes to the implementation of all these commitments, the situation is not that good. The Pakistan was once part of open government partnership, but now it's active because Pakistan failed to submit the plan of action. Majority of Pakistan's population is Muslim, 98%, and 2% are Hindus, Sikhs, and Christians. As per the Human Development Index rank, Pakistan is at 152 out of 189 countries. Gender Development Index is 0.7 out of 1. GDP growth is declining. Now, this year it is minus 1.55. The expected GDP growth is 2.5 in 2021. Sorry, when it comes to the state of democracy, Pakistan is not behind these other South Asian countries. Our space is, we are ranked at 108 out of 167 as per the Democracy Index 2019. And Pakistan average score out of 10 was 6.8 in terms of electoral processes. As I've already shared with you, that due to Corona, one of the election in the Gilgit-Baltistan region was delayed. Now the expected date is 15th of November. As per the governance and the functioning of the government, Pakistan is ranked at 5.7. Political participation is very low, 2.2. Political culture, and this also actually related to the civic liberties and everything, is very low, 2.5, and civil liberties is 4.7. When it comes to the freedom of speech and expression, Pakistan is partly free, as already shared with Anselmo, but we do have constitutional right. Article 19 in the Constitution of Pakistan gives constitutional right, but it is somehow contrary to some of the issues related to the glory of Islam, integrity of the country, defense of Pakistan, public order, morality, decency, contempt of court. And if any of these kind of things happen, the Article 19 is not applied. So the people face challenges if they express anything related to glory of Islam and decency and morality. Right to information, Pakistan does have constitutional right. Article 19A gives right to information, access to everybody. But again, we do not have data protection law. Otherwise, most of them are non-functional, and we do have right to information commissions. Most of them are non-functional. When it comes to civil society and civic spaces, overall CSO sustainability rate in Pakistan is 4.2, which is very, very low. If you see the diagram, the graph that I have been sharing, the organizations who are working for service provisions, they are giving more spaces, like 3.6, but the organizations who are working for the advocacy and human rights, their spaces are shrinking. Financial viability of the organizations working in Pakistan is also very, very low. And Pakistan is actually, as per sustainability rank, Pakistan is in the evolving stage. Here you see the data and the trends about COVID-19 in Pakistan. The first case in Pakistan was arrived in February 26th, and the first death was on March 18th. State of emergency was launched by March 13 to August 15. There was actually no proper lockdown in Pakistan. There were partial lockdowns for a certain period of time. However, the overall lockdown continued until May 9. The educational lockdown was continued until September 14. Here you see the trends of Pakistan COVID. By mid-June, you see that the highest number was reached, 300,000 people. And then there was a declining situation, and you see that now Pakistan is again rising. The biggest challenge was healthcare system. Actually, Pakistan spends only 1% of its GDP, and for the last several years, Pakistan is spending like 0.6% of its GDP on health. So that was a biggest challenge. During lockdown, the OPD and the immunization services, preventive healthcare services, and sexual and reproductive health rights services were severely impacted.
Gia, you have 5 minutes left, please.
Okay. So the same situation was on education. As I've already shared, about 22.8 million children are still out of school. COVID has impacted it further. However, the good thing is that Pakistan government started tele-school program to give opportunity to the children to stay at home and to study. The COVID-19 actually impacted on human rights and SDGs a lot. There were lots of macroeconomic and livelihood impacts on the population of Pakistan, whereas people living with disabilities and people living in the newly merged districts of FATA, Afghan refugees in Pakistan, we have almost 4 million Afghan refugees living in Pakistan, and then impact on at-risk workers were very, very high. The micro and small and medium enterprises were almost closed. Then the marginalized communities, including women, transgender communities, persons living with disabilities, also had very, very high impact during the COVID regime. The government response on COVID was having very progressive. National Coordination and Operations Center was established at the national level, and they followed five-pillar approach, putting health at the first, and then protecting people, and then economic recovery, and then macroeconomic responses from the government through multilateral collaborations, and then social cohesions and community resilience support. So Pakistan's case is considered as a success story because of certain reasons. At the policy level, as I have already shared, Pakistan did not went for a complete lockdown, whereas smart lockdown policy was adopted. Then kept economy open. And there was not a complete shutdown of industries in Pakistan during the COVID period. Then the government also started started very early and announced 1.2 trillion rupees, almost $12 billion stimulus package for the poor and the industry in Pakistan that helped them a lot. Then, in fact, a large population of Pakistan lives in rural areas. So because of not going for the complete lockdown, the rural area was completely safe. Therefore, there was not that much of spread. And then, of course, the health system, the doctors, the frontliners, they were doing lots of good jobs during this. And then civil society initiative. The government also provided space to the civil society during the COVID, and that helped a lot. Then there are certain structural reasons of Pakistan's not having that much of spread of COVID. Pakistan's 70% population is less than 30. The obesity rate is only 8%. It's very conservative culture, Pakistan, that also helped a little bit. Then we have, like as shared with you, that very few population urban, and then we do not have that kind of high-rise buildings and centralized air conditions that also help. And then Pakistan also had this BCG vaccination. A couple of people are saying, and experts are saying, that having BCG vaccination is also helpful. So that helped a lot. Now I would like to share with you challenges and assessments. Many assessments were carried out by several independent organizations. As I've shared with you, the spaces were created during the COVID period, the Ministry of Economic Affairs also allowed the NGOs to work without signing any MOU. The HRCP also did, Human Rights Commission of Pakistan did fact-finding study and sharing that 94% respondent in Pakistan felt that wage labor had been most affected by this pandemic, and more than half were concerned that the religious minorities would be discriminated against the distribution of relief, because this was somehow, as I've shared with you, it was said that the minorities are not eligible for the relief items from the Muslim organizations. So that was a big challenge. According to the other surveys, women health, employment, and domestic abuse were also giving the rising trends. We also did lots of observational surveys and national assessments and trends about gender-based violence, which was rising. I'm not going to share that. Action plans and proposals. There are certain proposals related to COVID, since the second wave of COVID is expected also in Pakistan and in the region. Therefore, a robust sensitization campaign for public awareness may be launched through media and civil society based upon the learning and experiences we have up till date. Multi-stakeholders consultative process to understand impacts of COVID on human development policies and structures at national and regional level need to be suggested, and appropriate and doable way forward need to be adopted. Regarding the SDGs, actually SDGs are the main sufferers due to the COVID and has shattered the economies across the world that will have implication on global human development instruments like SDGs. Financing for SDG was already miserable, and after COVID, it is expected to be further decline. So what will be the future of SDGs? Civil societies at national and regional level may initiate multi-stakeholder dialogue and suggest appropriate measures on how to achieve SDGs in the current scenario. Many national governments have prepared their SDG national framework, priority frameworks, but we have not seen the priority frameworks of the civil society organizations to hold the government and the private sector accountable towards the implementation. So this is also very, very important. Towards democracy, civic space, and human rights. Today, democracy, civic space, and human rights are in danger in Pakistan and in the region, whereas all the nation states have, nation states have commitments under various national and global instruments, including constitutions, laws, UN conventions, SDGs. It would be good to identify government commitments related to democratic values and cultures, including civic spaces and human rights, to develop civic charter of demand. So it may be done by the Kathmandu Democracy Forum. There should be a civic charter of demand on behalf of civil societies in the region. Multi-stakeholders dialogue among parliamentarians, media, political parties, CSOs, academics, labor unions, and private sector may also be initiated at national and regional level to achieve demands under civic charters. Thank you very much indeed for listening.
Thank you, Jia, for your excellent presentation. The last part you mentioned about the civic charter of demand, I believe the Kathmandu Declaration, which we are going to adopt the last day, closing session, can be considered civic charter of demand, So feel free to respond to, because still we are getting the comment and input from you to improve the Kathmandu Declaration. The first draft is already available. So please give us your comments so that we can put all your good ideas into one document, which can be our guidance for future action. So thank you once again. Let's go to the next country. Now we go to island country from continent to Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka, we have a two-person who prepared the report. So you'll be presented by the two-person, Isha.
Yeah, Udan. Thank you so much for inviting us. Actually, our presentation is huge, but what I'm trying to do is try to manage the time. That's one of the biggest tasks I'm going to have it. Okay, I'm with Udan Fernando, who was a member of the Asian Civil Society Research Network. He's also there. So let me strategize. I will just touch with the SDG situation, SDG, I suppose, process and the institutional process. And also I will touch with the new government thinking about the SDG and the challenges faced by the civil society. Then I will talk about the COVID, how we have been successfully mitigating certain areas of COVID and the second wave. And also Udan will discuss about the COVID impact in the economy and the social aspect. So let me start. I'm just talk about, I think, let it go with the slides. I will just talk about the SDG system that we have is actually by 2015, I think we were able to we were able to start with the structural stability. We brought the act to the SDGs after the signed by the SDGs, and then the act gave us a fundamental and also the responsibility of the government to act according to the act regarding the stability of the SDG entities. So we have act has brought us to the formulate the ministries, and then also act has given us the cadre to work with the ministry to work toward the SDGs. One of the challenges the act has going in is to how the civil society work into the act. So regarding the civil society in the act, we have a lot of challenges on civil society, because in the act, civil society was actually omitted in this act. And therefore, the civil society had a lot of challenges to face with the government to bring the civil society into the SDG table. So under that perspective, civil society able to bring able to convince the ministry of the SDGs to put the civil society into the first civil society into the SDG Council. So how our era is MDG era, and then we are talking about SDG 2015-19, where the complete structures form. Then of course we are talking about the after 2019. Sri Lanka is more vulnerable actually, because we have become very vulnerable country. Today the two major biggest countries are looking at Sri Lanka as one of the best countries. So you can keep it as it is. Thanks, Ul. One of the Sri Lanka is United States of America, who was with us recently regarding discussion about Sri Lanka stability and Sri Lankan connection with the China. And China's highest number of Communist Party members were in Sri Lanka regarding our economy and how they are going to actually be partner with our economy and our development programs. And recently, 2 days ago, we were being contacted by the South Korean president regarding the Sri Lankan's development programs and discussion they had with our present president, how they are going to be involved with that. So that gives some kind of importance to the Sri Lankan country as in the region. So why it's so important is something that is still is in a phase, because our geographically located and our commitment to the development and the middle income, that the way we are walking into the middle income country and the sustainable with various programs that we do. SDG has given us two things. One thing is to set up the bureaucracy in the government, which cannot be changed by any governance who come to the after an election. And also Sri Lanka legislation, special parliament also had given a focus on select committee. So they have, because of that select committee, and SDGs remain in the parliament as a focal point to the SDG development. That is, they have a select committee, which select committee are divided into 3 clusters. One is economic sustainability, one is the fundamental needs, and justice and fair need, and environment stability. And it has given, and within that cluster, appointing the meeting subcommittees based on the cluster headed by the Speaker of the Parliament and also the ministers. So can you go to the slide number 10, please? What challenges we are facing on the SDGs? Well, because of the SDGs, it was prior to the 2015 and 19, during that time, the challenges we faced, because we had this fragmented institutional structure preventing the integration, because we have so many structures within the organization, within the government, which has complex the whole situation. And the duplication of role in SDGs maintain because we have a central government, we have a what you call a provincial government, and so on. So that has a duplication work. And also so many, it's like in a slang language, we have too many leaders, and that spoils the whole soup in the whole thing. So there's so many people involved with it, and they're unable to do so. And the representation of the government is also in problem. Elections are too many frequent elections, and has changed all the challenges. Next slide. And next, the civil society. As I said, primarily the SDG do not want to do with the civil society because even there's no room in the Act civil society can engagement. But civil society, taken the consideration of the one of the Act of Article 14, said that they will walk into the SDG era and they will do the monitoring reports, and which at the end the government accepted the monitoring report, which we did at the 2018. One of the National Volunteer People's Report, which was presented at the High Level Political Forum, then the Transparency International Sri Lanka report on the corruption, and also the post-MDG Southern Voice report, and Amnesty International on Human Rights, and also so many other reports done by the non-government organization. Now, let's talk about the present. After 19, we had two elections.
Isha, sorry, I think you have to get into the COVID-19 because you already spent half of your time. Still, you have not, the main topic, the later part, of your PowerPoint, please. Otherwise, you don't have enough time to discuss COVID-19.
Okay. So the Sri Lankan health sector, COVID-19, we have two areas. One was first of March to August 20, the first phase, which we had 3,000 affected people, death totals only 12. Curfews imposed in whole island 52 days. Method we did with cluster control. How we had the system was it, the COVID-19 system, we prepared a task force, which is involved with all the information institutions, health, military, law and order, and the private sector with the health. And that's a task force who's now control the COVID-19. That task force has three main areas. One is just to control the COVID-19 spreading, PCR testing, and also maintain the hospital and up to the standard. One of the biggest...
Isha, please show the next slide. Next slide.
Yeah, next slide is slide number 19. 19, please. Slide number 19, you can see, can you go, yeah. It says Sri Lanka health system, really heavily government sector, responsible for providing universal care system. We are free of charge for everything. And we also have providing the free minor treatment for the major surgical treatment in health sector. Our health sector is comprising with the communicable disease as well as non-communicable disease. We can go into the major, all the hospitals have district-wise, divisional-wise, as well as village-wise. And government sector also has the patient would go direct to the government department. Any infection that matter will concern, will take care of. Therefore, because of the bulk of the workload handling COVID-19 pandemic, that was done more in the Ministry of Health by the health sector. So if you look at the beginning of the first phase of COVID-19, our affected people are 3,049 only. Death totals only 12. Curfew imposed whole country 52 days. Method was controlling the clusters, and the quarantine centers were designated by the government. Next slide, please. And then next one, the second wave, we had it. Second wave of the mistake challenge was the biggest challenge was that they did not go into the vulnerable community to do the PCR testing. They stick to the first cluster and they thought the PCR test should be within it, but they realized that there's a vulnerable community called fishing community and the factories. Therefore, the second wave came on the October 4th without any warning, and the numbers went rises. You can see that the month effective containing pandemic, initial month, Sri Lanka was caught unaware of the cluster, merged by the rapid spread into the garment factory near the Kathmandu early October. On Sunday, the 1st November, Health Authority reported a total of 10,000 cases at that time. 20 deaths on 4,900 only recovered due to this garment factory. And they are all young people. Cluster-based on approach does work some area, not in many areas due to the prevalence of the community spreading. Therefore, today, as of today, we have 11,300. You can go to the next slide. 11,335 victims. We have 21 days. Today, we have 2 days. That is about 23 days. We have active cases of 6,000 and daily new cases 275. Now they impose the curfew only on the cluster buys. So it's the curfew at the moment we have only Western Province, which is the capital of Kathmandu, where the hub of the COVID-19. You're hoping to have a 3 to 4 weeks. At the moment we are going to the third week. The method and approach was this COVID-19 were clustering, imposing curfew targeted the location, cities and village-wise. So we were all down. Today we are all locked down. The quarantine centers, they decided to have a stage 1 and 2 sicknesses can be in the home base, which is the home base, the victims are actually followed by the public health inspector who come into the villages, come to the houses and check the patients. In the stage 3, patients are designated quarantine center, which also comes under public health inspector's review, and as well as it was managed by the mostly military. Then the quarantine center has 2 areas, which is government controlled quarantine centers managed by the military, and you have private sector quarantine center, which is the hotels where the patient can pay their hotel bill, but the government and the military will follow their monitoring their progress of their quarantine exercise. Stage 4 is designated hospital. This is mainly due to the unable to cope up with the many patients walking to the disease hospital. Next slide, please.
Okay, Isha, you have only 2 minutes to wind up.
I think I will give this to Udan to decompose the politics and the COVID-19. Udan?
Udan, sorry, you cannot, you cannot have a 10 minutes. You have to, since you are second person, within 3 minutes, you have to wind up. You have to come to the conclusion, okay?
Message is that although the cost in terms of human lives and the affected cases was relatively low compared to other countries in the region as well.
Hello, Udan? Shall I end up?
Hello, Udan. Are you still with us? Some connection problems?
Yeah, the biggest cost was the political cost, because it so happened that the COVID-19 period coincided with a with a new political regime settling in, and there was a lot of pressure to have another election.
Sorry, there's some.
You're breaking. You're breaking.
Your voice is break. Udan, are you okay now?
Judiciary was also not fully operational. So a lot of areas that are related to SDG 16 were impacted negatively, and we have elaborated those those impacts vis-a-vis the SDG strategies that we
Sorry, again this problem.
No, I think what he's trying to say is that because of the SDG strategy we cannot do, because too many politically we are in a instability.
Okay, Isha.
Yeah. Hello. Hello.
Anselmo, you're mute.
Sorry, yeah. Isha, could you please show the slide one by one slowly so that we can read the content of slide? I think his connection is very weak.
Yeah, if you can go to impact on SDG 16.
Okay.
Yeah. So can you do that? Number 22, yeah. Yeah, the impact on the strategies is one by, I said, a serious contradiction misuse of the international instrument such as ICPR or digital mean to combat violence, that has been misused, and it's due to these various due to this new regiment. We don't know where we stand with it. Number 2, next slide. Another impact is we are having is bringing the 20th amendment midst of this COVID-19 situation. which has given us a very most relevant institution like transparency, accountability, audit commission has abolished by the 20th Amendment. So we are in a kind of a situation. It also abolished the National Procurement Services Commission, which is not there anymore. So therefore, 120 state companies exempted from the government audit. And it shows in that. And next slide, please. And also, sorry, same thing, keep it as. And also, we have one other thing is positive feature is the right to information clauses still remain in the Constitution. But practically how well is going to be with the Constitution, how well it is practical to be as is questionable. All the commissions are taken away from the Independent Constitution Council. And the council will be appointed by the hierarchy, the president and the prime minister. No more council can be appointed by the committee. So these are the other factors we are facing. And also parliamentary council, which is not to be able to make recommendation to even the scope and the powers of this constitutional council, which also we are facing a huge problem with the 20th Amendment. And this is will to be compromise and independence of the commission members. And this is supposed to be a democratic country, and we are facing so much of other issues. So this is the COVID-19 impact during the COVID-19 that we found. Beginning the 20th Amendment, middle of this whole situation also brought a lot of problems to Sri Lanka. Hopefully, we can see where we'll be alive. But as a health-wise, just give me 1 minute, as a health-wise, combating COVID-19 with the institutional structures is very strong because our health sector is very strong. Therefore, people have faith on the health sector, and that is why our numbers are minimum, even the death. And they have a very strong monitoring system. But I hope any political influence, if they can jeopardize this system, it's going to be a bit of a problem to us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your sorry, Udan. So we can communicate to you later on. I think Sri Lanka is a very interesting case because, you know, in terms of number of the cases, the data, according to data, Sri Lanka considered one of the successful cases, very good case. I mean, the successful story, but politically you are facing a lot of challenges, you know, another political transition. So, but nevertheless, in terms of COVID-19, I think you did a very good job. So I think this is something we need to study together, you know. And Sri Lanka case, I think there are a lot of the lesson learned for other countries in South Asia. So this is the last presentation of South Asia. So let's move to the center of whole Asia, Central Asia. We have Kazakhstan. Inkara, are you ready to make a presentation now? Okay, please.
Can you hear me, and can you see my screen? A few seconds.
We could hear you, but we can't see your screen yet. Now we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anselmo, and good afternoon. I guess it's good afternoon to all the participants and honorable guests. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Asian Democracy Network and Anselmo Lee and all the colleagues for initiating this timely discussion. You know, for Kazakhstan, being in the middle of the region, it's very important to be actively involved in all the processes, along with other Central Asian countries. So in case of Kazakhstan, I think early in the year, Kazakhstan seemed to be a virus-free country with no confirmed cases. We only discovered our first confirmed cases in the middle of March, after the WHO has declared the COVID as a global pandemic. And the measures taken by the government, they were not unique. As the number of infected people began to mount rapidly in March, the government introduced the physical distancing and social distancing to contain the virus. And for half of a year now, we can say that measures adopted by the country government pose significant challenges to the daily life and democracy and civic space in Kazakhstan. They also exposed existing human rights violations and inequalities and had a devastating effect on vulnerable groups. Many of the fundamental rights, including rights to life, right to health, right to freedom of assembly, freedom of expression, I think they all have been severely violated during the pandemic. And one of the most issues raised by the COVID-19 was the state of healthcare system. The healthcare system in Kazakhstan was not ready for the spread of the virus at the early stage due to the limited capacity of hospitals and lack of medical staff. Institutions were unable to start working in the local disease control. Yeah, well, the first cases were detected in March. However, the mass testing was only announced in late April. Yes, and hospitals were facing increasing pressure from the growing number of patients. And we also have experienced like drug shortages and price hikes. People had difficulties in finding even ordinary medicine during this time. The pandemic has also had significant consequences on the right of education. I think the government of Kazakhstan closed down all the educational facilities since March, but following the results of conducting trial online classes, they decided to abandon online learning because of the inability to ensure uninterrupted operation. The limited access to digital technologies affected children with special needs, orphans who had difficulties with access to education even before the pandemic. Another huge consequence was unemployment. I think the COVID pandemic has led to massive changes in labor markets in Kazakhstan. The majority of business started to close their doors and followed by job losses. By the end of June, the government assessed the unemployment figures and the number exceeded 4 million. For our country, it's almost 25% of the total population. And I think as everywhere in the world, COVID has further exaggerated gender inequalities and incidents of gender-based violence. Women in Kazakhstan constitute the majority of health workers, and women in Kazakhstan also have to take care of their family, elderly responsibilities, which lays a lot of stress on them. And in addition, quarantine measures put them at heightened risk of violence. One of the hotlines set up for survivors reported a 50% increase in the calls as compared to the last year. And I think it's safe to say that pandemic posed a serious challenge on democracy. We cannot say that all the measures adopted in Kazakhstan were inherently undemocratic. But in case of our country, I think democracy suffered a lot from centralized power and led to certain limitations. In particular, Kazakhstan limited access to information about the spread of the virus and implemented quite strict restrictions. They put restrictions on journalists, healthcare providers, and others who attempted to inform the public. It has threatened criminal sanctions and opened investigations into people who spread false information. In addition, the Ministry of Health confused us, the population, with statistics, because in the beginning of June, Kazakhstan started to consider symptomatic and asymptomatic patients differently. In addition, they did not include patients with pneumonia in the statistics. So this all raised huge doubts about real numbers of cases and especially number of deaths from COVID. Authorities have also used existing laws to suppress freedom of expression among activists and journalists. Civic activists have been detaining for spread of information. I think during this COVID time, we had more than 60,000 people detained for violating state of emergency. Kazakhstan also Kazakhstan measures against peaceful assembly also represented a huge violation of international standards, because in May, President signed the law on peaceful assembly, but which had a lot of criticism over restrictive provisions of this law. And when we talk about the assessment of the government response, well, while in some cases the restrictions were proportionate and justified in for protecting lives. In many places, they have undercut civil liberties. I think countries with weak democracies, like Kazakhstan, they have suffered and experienced more centralized power and repression. But in this case, I think the effectiveness of the response greatly depends on the level of coordination and cooperation with different actors, including civil society. But this was not the case in Kazakhstan. The state of emergency, I would say, provided additional tools for continuing political oppression in the country. In many cases, restrictions adopted by the country was not specified and allowed authorities applied inappropriately harsh measures. And the fact confirmed that authorities primarily concentrated their efforts on censorship and preventing spread of information rather than focusing on democratic efforts of containing the virus. If we talk about civil society, I think as everywhere in the world, civil society in Kazakhstan has been facing many challenges and uncertainties. And despite of experience and expertise in the sphere of affected by state of emergency, in most of the cases, they were not included in the national mechanism on crisis response. However, driven by self-initiatives, they have greatly contributed in filling the gaps and responding to the needs of citizens. Especially, they helped a lot to vulnerable groups. They were actively involved in humanitarian help to the public. Everyday stories emerge how people across the country join initiatives to help fight the COVID. In terms of proposals, I think our main suggestion to the government would be finding new ways of including democracy efforts to the COVID emergency and recovery aid. And of course, emergency restrictions are necessary, but at the same time, emergency restrictions affecting human rights, including freedom of assembly, association, they should be limited in duration. They also should be clearly communicated and enacted in a transparent manner. In every stage of the government response, efforts should be made to include national human rights institutions. As I also said, there were no formal mechanism of engagement civil society in our country. So I think it's very important that government have this in place. And of course, if possible, provide some funding to allow democracy and human rights organizations to continue to work. And at the end, all the policies and measures to address the crisis, well, they need to uphold human rights. We also have international organizations, and I think they, in their turn, they can provide invaluable support in developing strategies. And our proposal here would be maintaining and, where possible, increase their commitments to defending democracy globally. I think integrate key activities on COVID preparedness and responding to existing plans, supporting civic advocacy and monitoring efforts to promote transparent decision-making, and maybe create regional programs to support the new democratic activism that the pandemic prompted. And in conclusion, I want to say that post-COVID environment will look different, and I think it requires new ideas and approaches to safeguard democratic practices. And many issues, I think, will look even graver than before, placing countries in challenging in tackling the social economic consequences of the pandemic. So there's an enormous range of work ahead, and much of it will rest on regional solidarity and cooperation. I think it's more than ever important to ensure that the whole society and CSOs work together across the sectors and support and complement each other as much as possible. And in Asia, I think our responses can look at each other's experience, especially such coordination should include the countries who have already applied successful responses and showed how democracy advantage in this situation. Yeah, and then to conclude, I'd like to say that the world has experienced pandemics like COVID before, and unfortunately, COVID-19 may not be the last. So it's legislation and practices adopted during COVID would be quite hard to reverse. And having this in mind, I think it's the role of civil society will be even more important. So I think we all have to reaffirm our willingness to take a leadership role on democracy and promoting sustainable development goals, because SDGs, they already provide quite a, let's say, substantial guidance for COVID crisis recovery and for stronger society that leave no one behind. So the challenge now is to sustain and accelerate efforts to achieve this vision. Oh, thank you very much for your attention and good luck to everyone. And I'm looking forward to our fruitful discussion in the upcoming days. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Inkara, very much for, I think you are the only one who keep the time, very good. Congratulations, time management, and also faithfully following the 6 guidelines for your presentation. It's much easier for us to understand, all the key points, and also what's happening in Kazakhstan and beyond. Okay, now, so thank you for all your 6 excellent presentations. As you see, there are common, at the same time, differences in these 6 presentations. Especially, we have some successful cases like Sri Lanka, and also not so successful or failing cases, all different. So now we are going to invite discussant Daya, who is from Nepal, who has also a lot of experience in South Asia. Daya, having listened to these 6 presentations, I'm sure we have a lot of information and knowledge. And so can you give us your view, how you see the common and difference? What are the common taking, your own taking from 6 presentations? Daya, you have about 5 minutes, please.
Okay, thank you, Anselmo. I would like to, put my ideas into 3 groups. First, I will try to assess all the presentations made by our presenters. And I have some comments also. I have some questions also to the presenters.
You have a maximum 5 minutes, not another 12-minute presentation.
So I will try my best to complete my ideas within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And my observation is that after presentation, civil and political rights, economic, social, and cultural rights are extremely violated in the countries. And South Asia is hit hard, even in the world, and it has impacted in all the sustainable development goals. But the COVID has impacted different people in different ways, and especially the poor people, working class people, indigenous peoples, Dalits, people with disabilities, minorities, women, LGBTIQ, senior citizens, youth are suffering. And we have already, the countries are already suffering from different types of pandemics, not only COVID-19, for instance, poverty, inequality, climate crisis, bad governance, these are already existed in South Asia region. And the next observation is that states are not able to save the lives of the people. This is the very serious issue. And we are failed to formulate right policies, and we are failed to establish people-oriented system and institution in our region. And geopolitics is also affecting in the COVID-19. And COVID-19 is not only the health crisis, it is also the justice crisis. My question is that, my question to our presenters is that, is the justice system, what we have, are they really working now? This is my first question. And in this COVID era, is there any cases of arbitrary arrests, killings, fake encounters, and people dying in police custody? And what is the status impunity in your countries? These are my questions. And is there any types of corruption cases in your countries in this COVID era period? And how the anti-corruption bodies are working in your countries in this period? And how leadership, political leadership, is working in your country? And are especially the service delivery organization, public service delivery organization, are they really working in your country, especially the healthcare service providers such as hospitals? And is there people trust to the public institution at this time? And we see that mortality rate is rapidly increased in all the countries. And some countries like Nepal, free test, free treatment has been lifted by the government. And in case of Nepal, 82% people are, staying in home isolation rather than in hospitals. And the mental health, we did not talk about the mental health and what is the situation of mental health in our countries, because case of suicide is rapidly increasing in our countries. And in Sri Lanka, the election was happening in Sri Lanka. My question to our friends is that, is election is can hold accountable to the government? Can election democracy can the guarantee the democracy? Are all the people are enjoying the democracy in our countries? And regarding the COVID response, the COVID response process is inclusive in our countries, and all the stakeholders are included in that process. And how our parliaments are working in our countries, and people, organization, and marginalized communities are involved in the COVID-19 response process. And what is the situation of media in our countries, then, and how the government is trying to restrict media in our countries. And the civic space is very serious in South Asia. I want to present that, in Nepal, Bhutan, and Sri Lanka, the status is obstructed. And India, Bangladesh, Afghanistan, Maldives, the status is repressed, according to the Civicus, latest report of the Civicus. And how the constitutional bodies are functioning in our countries, And my last question is that how the minorities are protected in this COVID era, especially the LGBTIQ, refugee, and other minorities. In case of Nepal, Dalits people and the minorities, LGBTIQ people are suffering a lot. These are some questions to raise to our presenters. Thank you, Anselo.
Thank you very much, Taya. I think your question very comprehensive. I think very useful, like a checklist. Can you please share your intervention text so that we can use for our declaration? I think it contained a lot of useful information. Okay, so please send to me.
I will share you.
Okay, so starting from as he said, COVID-19 is not only the public health crisis; it is also justice, human rights, and also whole development model. The crisis, so we need to have a really broader perspective. He mentioned about various issues, not only human rights violation and corruption, the leadership, and the medical health system, and many things. But this already part, not all, but part of our online pre-questions circulated for public opinions. So I'm going to get one or two more questions from the participants, and then we'll present the result of our survey, and then we'll open the general discussion. Okay, next one. Can I invite Aziza from Kazakhstan to give a short comment and question? Aziza, please.
Yeah, hello everyone.
Hello.
I'm a speaker from Kazakhstan, and thank you very much for your excellent presentation. It was very interesting. My question is, what are the strategies to improve access to information, including access to the statistics?
Okay. Is there all? There's the one?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Aziza. So very short, but very fundamental question, access to information. There are a lot of fake news and then lack of information. So people are very confused. People don't get the right remedy and also access to medical services. question is right to information. You know, what is our strategy to ensure people enjoy the right to information? Thank you, Aziza, for your very short but very concise questions. So now, Sue, could you please share the result of our online survey? I'm very curious about how people respond. Oh, now you see the screen. So we have about more than 100 participants. So can you tell us about 100 people responded, and then large 63% of participants are from South Asia, and then Southeast Asia, Central, North, and we also a few from outside Asia. Okay, so these are composition of respondents. Let's go to question number 2. Which group have been economically and socially most affected by COVID-19? The first one was children and youth. Number 2, indigenous people. And can you show more? Let me scroll down. And then LGBTI. Oh, sorry, older people is a top, right? Older people is a top. And migrant workers and medical staff, women, persons with a disability, and then minorities and refugees, according to the data, because I believe everybody's seeing the same one in the screen. I'm not sure. So I'm reading from my own screen. The older persons is a 46%, the top, followed by children and youth 33%, medical staff 36, and migrant workers 38. You know, these are the top 4 or 5 most affected group of people. Let's go to question number 3. Which human rights have been most affected by COVID-19? The impact of COVID-19 on human rights. Number 1 is, I think, freedom of movement, 53%. Most probably because of the lockdown, you know, many countries, especially India, many South Asian countries, and the right to education, because children couldn't go to the school, and followed by right to food, right, freedom of assembly and association, and right to work, unemployment. You know, so these are the top 5, the human rights most affected by COVID-19. Let's go to number 4. What do you think about the causes of the COVID-19? Because there are 2 types of COVID. One is COVID-19 as a public health crisis itself, and also is an impact of COVID-19 on the human rights and so on. You know, these all combined, there are different types. So when you say the causes of COVID-19, direct and indirect. So number 1 is economic social inequality, and then climate, global warming, and unsustainable consumption and production, and urbanization, extreme poverty. These are the top 5. So these are some of the bases for our discussion. So I would like to invite, there's one more question, sorry. There's number 5. What do you think are most important factors in response to COVID-19 pandemic? Okay, so number 1 is medical institutions and infrastructure, public health. I think these are one, because as we learned from Sri Lanka case, Sri Lankan government have invested a lot compared to other countries in the past in the public health. This is one of the reasons that Sri Lanka is one of the successful cases. So infrastructure, public health system, and then political leadership, number 2, number 3, public awareness, and then followed by cooperation between central and local government and citizen participation. These are the top 5. And the last question, 6, what do you think should be the priority for civil society action in response to COVID-19? Wow, 66% public awareness building and education. Probably because as many presenters explained, you know, the fake news and the lack of proper information, education, and this is one of the reasons for COVID-19, the crisis. So there was 66%, it's a top. And second one is advocating human rights approach. Third one, monitoring of government policies and their implementations, and then providing the services and equipment for those infected with the COVID-19. Okay, these are some of the top choices by participants. This is a public survey. This may not be applicable all the countries, but these are very general, So 50% of participants from South Asia, the rest from Central Southeast Asia. Okay, thank you for all who have responded to this public survey. I think it's a very useful basis for our further discussion and questions. Sue, could you please, would you like to say any more about this survey? Additional information?
No, I think, there were 97 participants who actually answered. So it was at least 30% of those who actually attended today.
Okay, yeah. All right, thank you very much. Okay, now our 6 presenters, can you show your face? We are going to have an open discussion with you. And then we'll go one by one. So can you show the question once again? So based on these responses, we are going to have an open discussion. The first one is about impact of COVID-19 on people and their human rights, or SDGs. Okay, Shahid, you made a presentation about Bangladesh. I think there are some differences, your own analysis and this result of this public survey, right? Impact. Yeah. So could you please give us your comment about the impact? How do you see impact Bangladesh and whole South Asia? Is there any significant difference between Bangladesh and South Asia and this public survey?
Yes, actually, some of the cases that is almost the similar. For example, the health vulnerability, it is almost similar, except Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is comparatively more privileged in terms of the strong health systems. In Bangladesh, initially, we are not prepared at all regarding to face the COVID situation, so that the number of tests is comparatively less. But within a short period, government has tried to recover this situation, and the grassroots levels, the health workers and frontiers also involved to overcome the situation, so that the situation initially more vulnerable, but now day to day that is improving. Okay. In case of the other countries and Bangladesh, we have unfortunately, some scandal around the COVID-related issues initially, on terms of the N95 mask procurement, some relief aspects. But it has also recognized by the civil society to the government that government has strongly controlled the corruption, so that finally it has under control. But concern in here that is the eventual control, but need more control for the overall the corruption, not only the health sector. Okay, so, and that is the common concern, because corruption is highly related with the violation of human rights and other things. And another 2 issues is very important in Bangladesh compared to other countries. Number one, the Rohingya issue, because that is the more than 1 million people come from Myanmar in Bangladesh, so that initially the human rights practitioners, they are very much worried about how to government tackle the crisis within the COVID period in the Rohingya camp. But definitely it has recognized by the health practitioners and the human rights workers that government has highly and professionally controlled the COVID scenario within the Rohingya camp with the support of UNSCHR and others. And another issue is the
I think that's enough, because otherwise.
Okay,
thank you. Thank you very much, Shahid. Sue, could you please show the result of this public survey? So we want to have a discussion around this result. Okay.
I'm working on it. I'll be.
Yes, please. Yeah. So, first part of question was impact of COVID-19 on human rights and vulnerable group, because as we all know, the Leave No One Behind is a slogan for UN 2030 Agenda SDGs. So our role is to make sure that no one is left behind in this recovery process, right? So that's why there's a list of the vulnerable people who we believe the most affected. It's according to survey, you know, these older person, there are many groups. So from your own analysis, let me ask Arjun from India. India is still rising, right? The number of cases increasing, right? And then
Yes,
soon, because compared to other countries, India is on top among the South Asian countries. So what is really most affected compared to other sub-regions? I mean, within South Asia and Central Asia. Can you give us your comment about this result of survey? So now a result is available. Okay. So according to survey number 2, older persons was very high, you know, older person medical staff. Can you give us some quick comment from the India perspective compared to India reality? Or
Sorry,
anyone?
Anselmo, yeah. Well, according to this survey, I think yes, there was a point of time in which medical staff actually were the most vulnerable community in India, and of course, Dalits and other tribal groups have been facing discrimination and have reduced access to medical facilities. But all in all, I think medical staffs were the biggest constituency, because that they came out very strongly against how they faced the most difficult situations in getting themselves treated. They were faced discriminations. People actually locked themselves up. They were denied entry into the apartment buildings, and even Prime Minister Modi had actually announced that these were warriors. There was COVID-19 warriors. They were actually frontline warriors who were tackling and combating coronavirus. And still, we saw that people's sensitivity actually faded away. It was very low. So, according to my view, in India, medical staff was a big constituency which was very economically and socially affected. And still now, a lot of doctors and nurses have not received their dues and payments with regards to the services.
Yeah, okay, thank you. They are forefront of combating COVID-19, but they are now well protected, themselves, so they become the victim while, trying to take care of the patient. Let's go to Central Asia, the Inkara. Could you give us your comments on this result from Kazakhstan point of view?
Yes. So it's in terms of vulnerable groups. Yes, I think the most affected category would be elderly in Kazakhstan. We also had a huge infected medical personnel. I think even one hospital in Almaty was the center of the infection at the beginning of the pandemic. In terms of refugees and minority or LGBTIQ, I think we don't have much of the cases. I mean, in terms of this categories, this is not the case in Kazakhstan, and also goes this to indigenous people. But children also suffered a lot, and women. So I think.
So more similar to Kazakhstan, right? This survey.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Let's move to the next question. Question number 3. Sue, can you please show the question number 3? Number 3 is about impact on human rights. Just for information, the day after tomorrow, session 5, we are going to have 5 thematic presentations about the migrants, refugees, and Dalits, and also misinformation and inequality. So we will have a more in-depth discussion the day after tomorrow. But this one is just a result of survey. So let's see, freedom of movement was top, right? Freedom of movement and education and right to work. So who wants to make a comment on this one? Anybody from those who have not spoken? Let's invite whom from Nepal? And then Jia. Can you comment on this result survey in terms of your own country and also?
And some more, whom is not available, so I'd like to respond.
Oh,
okay?
yes, Tapa, yes, please, yes.
especially on these three areas, freedom of movement and right to education and right to food. I think that is correctly addressed in terms of Nepal case on COVID-19. So I think this survey just reflected the Nepal situation. That is all these lockdowns, freedom of movement and education, all the schools and colleges are closed. And also many people are looking for the day-to-day mouth to problem. So foot to mouth problem. That is the reflection was correctly shown in this survey. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. I believe almost more than 50% of respondents were from South Asia. That shows, the main challenges in South Asia. But very interesting, this will also applicable in Europe. Europe, because of heavy second wave, Europe again back to lockdown, total lockdown and shutdown, So this freedom movement is not only South Asia, whole global, maybe except Southeast Asia, So for instance, Northeast Asia, which we are going to discuss tomorrow, the right to privacy is a very serious issue, because of surveillance and then digital technology, It's useful, necessary, but also can be the causes of another type of human rights violations. Okay, so any other comment? Isha or Udan, you want to comment on this one, human rights?
And Salmo, can
yes,
I come?
Please, yes, Gia, please.
Just on this freedom of movement, I think this, though people feel that there are restrictions on freedom of movement, but that is being imposed by state, but not followed by the people at large. In fact, in South Asia, I know the culture, and those who are attending this seminar, they also know that people make their way one way or the other. So that freedom of movement is not that much curtailed. Probably the question that you might have asked for the survey is that how much they are free to go to their work and to the sightseeing and other things. Yes, there are several restrictions, but in that case, in Pakistan, I think there are processions going on. People are fighting for their rights every day. We see day before yesterday, there was a procession in Karachi for Arzu, justice for Arzu, a minority girl who was kidnapped, and she was forced to convert her religion, and then had this forced marriage also. So I think that freedom of movement is not applicable over here in Pakistan.
Okay.
But
So I think, listen. I think it's important, this survey is not very scientific, it's a perception survey, You should not conclude from this, okay, this is important or less important. That's wrong, So intention of survey is just a perception, and then we can use this perception for our discussion. Of course, your presentation, your reports and monitoring reports should substantiate or provide more evidence so that we can make a evidence-based proposal to the government. Okay, don't take it as a very scientific result of scientific, just perception, okay? So nevertheless, I think there's sometimes this insight from this public survey. So we want to draw that insight out of this survey, that's the purpose. And as you remember, there was 2 questions from Daya and then Aziza. Anybody wants to answer that question, especially right to information and also question of justice system. But next one, so when you discuss the next question about government response CSO, maybe some of you can answer questions from Daya and Aziza. Okay, so let's go to the next question. Question number 4. The first 2 questions were about impact of COVID on human rights and vulnerable groups, right? These are the first 2. And in your 6-country presentation, you describe, who most affected which human rights, So, but now let's go to the response, government response. Okay, question number 4, please, Sue. So number 4, number 5 were about government response and also CSO response, which is very important. many of you made a presentation, I mean, including what civil society should do or can do, you know, or do together internationally, a lot of good ideas. Okay, this is the one. What are the most important factors in response to COVID-19? COVID-19, which means why some countries are successful, why some countries are not failing, you know. So these are some of the factors. So number one is a medical institution and infrastructure for public health. This is a top. And then political leadership, and then public awareness. As I said, all are important, but maybe based on your own country and situation, or whole South Asia or Central Asia, maybe you can highlight some of these. Anybody wants to comment on this one?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
The success story of Sri Lanka, I'm not saying is that because we had some kind of a control system now. Because they have put the controls of the movements of the people, they gave the first impression is about the gravity of this sickness, how that you can take the virus and contagious to another person. So due to that, they make awareness of that, the gravity of your movement. It has given some kind of a criteria. If you do this, 1, 2, 3, 4, how it can impact the other person's health. So therefore, they put the health into the first place. Then the control system came from them because they realized it. The civil society, tell you the truth, civil bureaucracy cannot control the human behavior because they are more civil. But the control of the military bringing, tell them, I mean, they are not antagonizing or they don't put, but they gave us some kind of law. They brought a law to Sri Lanka. One is the gazetted restriction of the movement. You cannot go. If you have a quarantine, you cannot move into another place. District by district has some control. So they make that to control, to spread the virus, not because of anything else. So the health came that way. Yeah, that's the reason.
I think, remember what Aziza from Kazakhstan raised. She said right to information, which means some government listen to advice from the medical expert, so-called the science-based approach. So all the information available to the public, they are genuine, accurate, science-based, not political interest or ideology. You know, that's one of the important points, you know. So these also relate to the public communication and the public trust, whether people trust the government policies and the directions. So these are all interrelated, you know, for me. Okay, any other comment on this question? Arjun from India. India is now facing a lot of challenges, not because we are a huge country, but governance, the system in dealing with the COVID-19. Do you have anything to say from this survey, from India point of view? Arjun in the room?
I don't see him in the. He's
okay,
in
so
the
he's
room.
not in the room. Okay.
He's not in the room. Oh no, he's there in the room.
I see also Gopal, although Gopal is not one of the 6 presenters. Would you like to give one comment about this survey result, Gopal?
Thank you very much. In fact, I've already put my, a tiny observation with regards to the overall result of the surveys, because these are basically based on the face value. I mean, and in legal term we call it prima facie perception only. So as you already mentioned earlier, Anselmo, that the outcome of the perception should not be treated as scientific results, but rather this needs to be substantiated with facts, figures, and evidence-based research. But it's a very good opening because the results are based on our friends, colleagues working directly in the field at grassroots levels. So this perception cannot be undermined in that sense, of course. But again, it opens up a new corridor for us to engage in more research and statistics-based, observation in order to substantiate this. And I think it's a great work, and I congratulate everyone for that.
Okay. So Arjun is in the room. Arjun, so your comment or observation about this survey based on your own experience in India?
Well, I think one of the most important observations that I would say is that the most important factor in response to the COVID-19 pandemic has been our public communication and trust. I think there's been an issue with transparency in bringing out data. There's been aspersions cast by different civil society experts, by different activists, whether there has been information about number of tests conducted, number of patients, and I think this will always be there, and it will go on till we find a vaccine. And I think it is necessary to see what kind of results come out later on. But otherwise, I think political leadership has been strong in enforcing lockdown, but now it has become very relaxed about it. Now they're thinking more in terms of driving the economy back home rather than containing the pandemic.
Okay, thank you,
That's it,
Arjun.
Anselmo.
And Salmo, in case of Pakistan, the political leadership was strong in not doing the lockdown, whereas there was a lots of criticism from the civil society and the other people. But we did not go for that complete lockdown. And now the people are saying that this is because of the strong point of view of the political leadership. However, I think the citizens' perception and the public communication and trust worked very well in Pakistan.
Okay, so thank you very much for your comments. Let's go to the last questions, concluding parts. Now the CSO. Okay, so these are the result of a survey, CXO action. I'd like to invite a short comment, let's say 1 minute comment about this result. Top was public awareness building and education from CSO point of view. As I said, we should not say, this is more important than others. All are important, but different contexts. So from this, we can draw kind of the implication and also insight based on your own experience and also the monitoring exercise. Because some of them will go into our final statement, Kathmandu. As Jia said, Kathmandu Declaration will be guide for our future action. And one of the presentation from, I think Nepal was used is a Human Rights Day, December, published a Human Rights Monitoring Report, kind of human rights campaign, using this December Human Rights Day. So a lot of good ideas from your presentation, but this is the most structural one. Any comment?
Actually, for me, Anselm, the civil society engagement is not only this education and awareness. I believe very strong civil society should engage with the government entity to combat the COVID-19, and it has to be with the socially, economically, and the governance side. The civil society get engaged with the government. The coherence and collaboration has to be there. We have to find a way to get into the government structure, how we can work with the government to help the civil society, help the citizens of the country, because government cannot go to every corner of the citizens. So civil society is the one can go into the vulnerable communities. They have more access than the government. I think we should find a strategy on that. And also, I think I propose WHO should engage civil society into their strategy. I had noticed the WHO is isolated. Again, they're isolated way of working. They're not getting UNDP, they're not getting ILO, they're not getting anybody. They're just working isolated. So I think we must push the WHO to engage civil societies into their strategic planning in the time to come. So I think those two have to go.
May I make a comment, one comment?
Okay, so one by one, I will give the chance to everybody. So one proposers. Now we are making kind of conclusion. You can answer the question from Daya or Aziza, or you can make a recommendation. As Isa said, bring the issue of WHO, role of WHO globally and nationally. So how we can prove our action as a CSO, Okay, so one suggestion and one person. Okay, starting with Tapa, please. Less than 1 minute.
Yeah, just thank you. Thank you. I'm not just taking just only 1 minute. I think there is no doubt that the civil society organization has doing this awareness campaign. However, they are also supposed to engage for preparing the this public policies making process of the government. That is the most important, because of that lead all the process and action in the field. That's just one point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for highlighting. I think there's a number 2. I think number 3, participation in public policy making process, that means including international organizations, right? Because they are operating nationally too. So make sure that government policies are more applicable and response to people's need on the ground. Okay, there's an advocacy part. Okay, let's begin with Central Asia. Inkara, just one comment or suggestion, because we are going to have a similar discussion tomorrow. That is for East Asia, right? South, but this is from South Asia, Central Asia. Ikara, can you give us your concluding observation or suggestion?
I would agree with the colleagues that it's very important we all talk about inclusivity, right? And when there is no national mechanism in place, so it's quite difficult to be engaged, to be inclusive. In terms of this factors, I think all of them are important. As we know, a lot of funds were raised to support vulnerable societies. So in this case, independent monitoring is needed. Advocacy is very important. Public awareness. So I think a part of from humanitarian support, civil society needs to be engaged in every stage and have the opportunity to raise their voice and be included in decision-making processes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Inkara. Let's go to Arjun, one by one.
Okay.
I think, Anselmo, 2 points I would like to make over here. One is independent monitoring of impact. I think this should be a collective global response by civil society organizations, big organizations, if they can actually go and datascape on the impact of COVID-19 at the grassroots levels. And this can be only done by civil society and national platforms like Vani and ADA and all these other big organizations that are working at the national level. Secondly, I think fundraising and providing financial assistance to people in need, because I think could be a huge challenge for organizations right now, as they don't have any funding and resources, with the global north actually facing an issue. So now I think funding will be something important that organizations will have to see in, and that should be linked to also providing working capital to people at the working at the labor level, at the informal level, so that they can also sustain themselves, and civil society organizations can also sustain themselves.
Okay, thank you. So I want to make sure that all your points are in our final declaration. As I showed, there is a civic space monitoring by Civicus, which shows reality of civic space. So our monitoring is not only the impact of COVID on vulnerable people, but also civic space as well, because we as a civil society, we have an important role to play, Let's go to Jia from Pakistan.
Thank you, Anselmo. I think I would like to make one recommendation very strongly. In fact, the regional cooperation has been halted since COVID, and in many countries because of so many other peace issues, particularly in India and Pakistan. I would emphasize that we share culture, we share languages, we share everything, but and we also share borders with each other, particularly in South Asia, 7 countries. But in fact, important thing is that the trade that we were doing together earlier, this COVID, that needs to be reduced, to be reinstated, because that has been actually creating lots of problems. I would like to share with you that in Pakistan, we have been facing food security issue, and every now and then we have been listening that the tomato is not coming from India, the potato is not coming from that country. So to me, I think these are also very, very related to human rights issues. So the regional cooperation and the communication should be reinstated among the countries in South Asia.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. We have a SAC, South Asia Regional Cooperation, it's a summit, but it's not functioning, right?
Yeah.
Because we need a stronger regional coordinate governments like a SAC and the ASEAN. Because as UN Secretary General said, now we are facing COVID, public health crisis, but next one is a food crisis. You know, that's what he said, you know, especially next year. So I think we need a more regional cooperation. Okay, thank you. Let's go to the, Shahid from Bangladesh. Any final comments, suggestions?
Actually, in terms of the inclusive, responsive governance depends on the accurate data and served of the underserved area in terms of the geographical location and at the same time the marginalized communities. In many cases, the national government or CSO or international organizations, they are heavily centralized on depends on the some locations, but need to more underserved or unserved areas where the most extreme poor and marginalized people lived and fighting against for their improvement of the livelihood and overcome the COVID situation. That is my point.
Okay, thank you. Can I bring your attention to chatting room? There's one very interesting question in the chatting room. Let me read for you, you know, so anybody can answer this question as a concluding remark. COVID-19 has just provided a legitimate excuse for government not to be effective, efficient to protect rights of people, including freedom of expression and so on. Those problematics are not just new, but rather scale up. So what is the view of the presenters? So we already have a lot of challenges, civic space, bureaucratic, you know, corruption, you know, all these things, but now it's getting worse and worse in the context of COVID-19. So this is already, we discussed some of these issues before, but if you want to have any additional comment on this question, feel free to respond to this question. Okay, let's continue, concluding remark. Next one, let's go to Nepal. Tapa, you want to give a concluding remark about this civil society? Sue, please show the final result, civil society action, in terms of, now we are discussing our action plan, you know?
Yeah.
Proposals, please.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, Anselmo and Sue. Especially in regards to the civil societies and their priorities for responding to COVID-19 should be placed as according to the points raised under this question and answer and the section. Especially the civil society organization has to involve massively in this awareness campaign, because due to that reason, the COVID is spreading widely in everywhere around the world. And secondly, as I mentioned earlier, there is a very much important for civil society organization to just support to the government as well as engage in the policy making, and that should be on the action point. It is always very important. If there is a policy and plan, and that should be in action. That is very most important. As mentioned by our friend from Arjun from India, especially monitoring of all those activities, how it has been gone in around the world or around the country, that has to be very much emphasized to just look at what is going on and what should be corrected within the time frame. That should be very much in line that we should have to look at by the civil society organization, especially not only just limiting that area, but the plan and response and relief activities has to be good together in responding to the people who are those looking for the support. I think that is from our side, from the civil society side. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, I think it will be, as you know, we are organizing this one in partnership with the Nepali and South Korean government. Of course, we are working with the many other government as well. You know, this partnership with the government is very important, you know, to address real problem on the ground. So lastly, the Isha Udan is back. He still has a connection problem. Unfortunately, he couldn't finish his presentation. Okay, the Isha, maybe you can speak for Udan as well. Any comment on recommendation? What can we do together? Sorry, we cannot microphone, Isha.
Okay, we can do a lot together as a civil societies because we have diversified various skills we have, various knowledge we have. But my biggest thing is the Islam is that civil society must know how to work with the government. It's a collaboration, cohesion is very important in civil society because most civil society was hated by the many governments because they said that we do not know how to work with the government. So these are the other things come. So we need to come to a conclusion saying that we have to find a strategy to understanding and win the trust of the governments to work with it. That is one of the
Isha, we have to be really careful. It depends on government response to civil society.
Yeah, exactly.
We are all open to work with the government, but sometimes not all governments are open to civil society. Look at
exactly. So that we have to find a strategy. Yeah,
okay?
exactly.
So
we have to find a strategy.
You have to be very careful about formulating, the partnership.
Yeah, not formulating, but we have to find a way of. I mean, you have informal and formal way of working with the governments, so we have to find a way, and also we have to have a. That's I always say that this especially today. I think the civil society importance is very important now because as I said earlier, because vulnerable communities there are all strategies there, so we need to work together, find a way to strategy how we can work together, not only on the central government but also on the regional and the sub-regional.
Because tomorrow we are going to have a presentation about Thailand. Thailand is burning. Youth are in the street almost 2-3 months. In spite of all this COVID-19 crisis, because government did not listen to the voice of people, right? So these are the general guidelines for civil society action, but we cannot impose or we cannot apply this one, every situation. Depending on country situation, we have different strategies, but this is a very general one, So we have a more presentation tomorrow. 7 countries, the 5 from Southeast Asia and 2 from Northeast Asia, including Thailand. It's very interesting. Thailand will make also a presentation, so we'll get the really updated information about what's really happening in Thailand in the context of COVID and also youth action in the street. Maybe 10 years ago in Nepal, very similar to the Nepali experience 10 years ago, or 20 years ago in South Korea, So I think this is one of the key issues, democracy, civic space in the context of COVID-19 and also other political crises.
I think I will say this.
It's okay. No, it's okay. That's okay. Never mind. Yeah. Okay. So I think more or less we have discussed almost 4 hours, including 1 hour opening session. Of course, never enough. But nevertheless, we'll continue our discussion tomorrow. And the last day we have a thematic, which is a synthesis of all the national experiences, and then action plan, Kathmandu Declaration. So once again, thank you for all your Sue. By the way, Sue, any announcements or about today or tomorrow?
No, in particular. Tomorrow we start again, also 2 p.m. Bangkok time. If you haven't registered, it's a separate link for tomorrow, so please register. If you have already, use that link to join us again tomorrow and listen to rest of the great presentations. Thank you.
Okay. So tomorrow is a continuation of our discussion. And so then finally, we have put all the 13 country input plus thematic, so we can have a really very comprehensive regional perspective. So thank you for your contribution. And I'm going to put some of your ideas into Kathmandu Declaration. And so you feel free, to put your own, so that we can have a more participatory and then the comprehensive outcome, Okay, so let's give a big hands to everybody, especially Sue and those working behind the scene. So let's express our appreciation, Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.